Oh, what is up? Good to see you all back in our usual time spot after some time of the movie discussion, Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. As always, I'm Cole, joined by Jay, and we are returning to you after only 1 week off, which isn't too bad, and hopefully in the summer. I know a lot of people get busier in the summer, but I don't. I think I'll actually find it a lot easier to do stuff through the summer, so I think maybe we'll be able to get some more consistency going in our game here. But anyway, continuing our series on the Masters of Film, we did hint at what the next episode would be as far as director goes. And yes, it is Stanley Kubrick, madman of film. I don't know, whenever they show pictures of him, he always has like wild, crazy eyes. He looks like Rasputin or something. It's funny. And, when we talk about like various director stereotypes of like guys that are really intense and really weird and really, he's kind of like the template for a lot of that, I think. But always has enjoyed a great reputation as a really brilliant filmmaker, and he's had a pretty he's did I think 13 feature films, but they span a pretty long era from the 50s right into the 90s. We did talk a little about him, of course, when we did the Steven Spielberg movie AI, because originally that was going to be directed by him, and then he died, and Spielberg had to take over. I don't think we did a Kubrick movie besides. No, so yeah, so talking about that. And this is going, and as we said, we're trying to do some of the movies that are lesser known by some of these really well-known directors, and this is Barry Lyndon from 1975, a very overlooked movie, a movie that I hadn't seen before we actually decided to see it for the show. It had come on TCM a few months ago, and I had the foresight to record it, which is good. It was much more satisfying to be able to watch it on my TV than a little laptop screen, because this movie is very nice visually. I mean, just to get the obvious out of the way, this movie is basically a cinematographer's dream. This movie is just like, I don't know, I think it's like if you were ever going to be a cinematographer or be one of those photographer types and work in film, you kind of have to sit down and watch this movie, because there's just so many great things to take away from it. It's almost like a how-to. We'll get into it, but as far as like on a technical level, I put this movie right up there with something like Jaws. I feel like technically it is flawlessly executed, almost in much the same way that Jaws is. Okay, I lost Jay for a minute. He's got something coming up, but so yeah, this is a period piece, which a little bit different for somebody like Kubrick to do. A lot of people were surprised by it, but the truth is, the movie, at least something like the movie, was in the works for quite a while, going back to I think as early as the early 60s. What he'd originally conceived of was he wanted to do a film about Napoleon, and other stuff kept coming up. There were a few times where he was maybe going to seriously start working on Napoleon, and then he'd do Space Odyssey, which turned out pretty well. And then once again, I think he turned his attention to the Napoleon project, and then he wound up working on Clockwork Orange. And by the time that was done, there was a Napoleon movie that had come out that had actually flopped quite badly. And so he decided there was no reason for another one. But he still wanted to do something of that era. And that's where he happened upon the subject matter, which is a novel from back then of the same title, Barry Lyndon. But as Jay and I were talking about beforehand, this is not, it was actually called, oh, sorry, it was from 1844. So yeah, a 19th century novel about an 18th century character. So it was the 18th century, the 1700s. But it was called The Luck of Barry Lyndon. It was by William Makepeace Thackeray. And what's interesting is that this is not like some classic, really well-known novel that gets taught in literature classes and stuff like that. It's not like Jane Eyre or something by Dickens or something. That this is more like niche kind of stuff. Like you'd only really have heard of it if you were into kind of that section of literature. So not really a well-known novel by any stretch of the imagination. So it's kind of an interesting thing for him to tackle just from that standpoint. But when I compare it to other period pieces of, say, the 18th century or the 19th century, it might be the best I've ever seen. And I think it's the one that kind of all the other ones kind of have to take from. Like, I think of a movie from a few years later, Amadeus came out in 1984. It's set in kind of the same era, also in Europe. I think it probably takes a lot of cues from this movie. It has a really great visual style, too, Amadeus. Who directed Amadeus?
So I was trying to think. It's
I used to know, and now I can't.
Rock Me Amadeus.
Yeah. But anyway.
Milos Forman.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All I could remember is that William, or F. Murray Abraham's in it. He's the guy that plays Salieri. That's a really cool movie, too, that I like a lot. But, yeah, so again, this was not really a movie that anybody really expected Kubrick to make, but he was obviously very set on it, and you can see the dedication that went into it. This movie it took almost a year of shooting, and a lot of painstaking, detail-oriented stuff. Kubrick is definitely one of the guys that's right up there for being a very hands-on, detail-oriented guy. Another guy that kind of follow in that footsteps that we're fans of is Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott, I think it's very much the same way, in that he would kind of drive some of his crews crazy because they weren't used to working with directors that were that detail-oriented. But Kubrick was very much the same way. Although I didn't really hear of any problems in this one's production.
I know Ryan O'Neal had some problems with the way he did it.
Okay. So, and supposedly also Ryan O'Neal, the fact that he was even going to be in it, that was also another surprise. He was not considered to be like a Kubrick-like actor, like the kind of... it does seem a little off the board, but at the same time, O'Neal is weird because he's an actor that, to me, like, he probably had a fairly long career, but I only think of him in the 70s. Like, it was like the beginning of the 70s, the end of the 70s, he's over, you know? Like, all his movies are the 70s.
That's one thing I was going to mention. Like, I can't believe that he was such a A-list actor. I think, Robert Redford was #1 and he was #2, something like that?
Yeah, he was a huge guy who just completely dropped off the map in the 80s.
Or maybe Clint Eastwood was #1, he was #2.
Yeah, I mean, he was right up there. He's in a few movies I didn't see that were big, like Love Story is considered a big movie. A lot of people think it's stupid. I'm probably, it has one of the dumbest taglines ever. Like, what is it? What is it? Being in love means never saying you're sorry, or some bullshit like that, which nobody agrees with. It's like, what are you talking about?
He was in Love Story, and then What's Up, Doc, and then this film, and I think 75, he was in Nickelodeon, which is a film I like a lot.
He's in The Driver, of course, which I love.
Oh, right. But that's
the main character
earlier in the 70s, isn't it?
No, that's 78.
Oh, is it? Okay. After this. He looks awfully young in this. It's just, it's so odd to think that he was such an A-list actor. Like,
yeah, no, he was. He was one of the absolute leading men of the 70s, right up there, like you said, with like Clint Eastwood and Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah. He was huge. And then he just seemed to drop off the map for whatever reason. It is funny, though. Like, I've always sort of found him to be kind of a bland actor.
Yeah.
Like, he had the leading man looks, but he didn't have a lot of charisma or anything. This might be the movie where he shows kind of the most charisma that I've seen. I haven't seen a lot of things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I love The Driver. The whole point is the character's not supposed to have charisma in The Driver. Like, he's just sort of a blank slate, much like what, Ryan Gosling would do a Drive years later. Right. The whole idea is, like, he's a guy that doesn't talk much or show much emotion. And that's fine. But, yeah, he does a great job in this, and he has to carry it. So this is also a 3-hour movie. It is divided into 2 parts, and I don't usually do this, but since it was, I did watch it in 2 parts, which, worked out pretty well, I guess. It has a little intermission of, like, about 30 seconds, kind of like the old days, where they just say intermission and play music. It's only about 30 seconds before they move into thing. And that is very much based on how the novel was set up. So the first part is, by what means Redmond Barry acquired the style and title of Barry Lyndon. And there's a real difference between the first half and the second half. The first half is much more kind of like happy in tone. It's even though serious stuff happens, but it's kind of like, oh, he's a rogue going around, and blah blah blah, having sort of adventures and misadventures. And then the second half is just very it's very not disturbing. It's very serious and melancholy. And that, of course, and they tell you right off, too, that, containing an account of the misfortunes and disasters which befell Barry Lyndon. I haven't read the novel, but the main difference, I think, from the novel is the fact that the novel is actually a first-person narrative that he narrates himself. And right off the bat, Kubrick, in his rewriting for it, decided that was not the way to go. It'd be better just have sort of an omniscient narrator. And that's what we get here. We do have a narrator who comes in and talks. He's been described as an unreliable narrator, and yet I couldn't find out where that works. Like, I didn't see parts that didn't line up. Like, how is he an unreliable narrator? I can't figure that out. Like, I watched the second half again today, and I was really trying to pay attention to what the narrator was saying, because if you look on like Wikipedia and stuff like that, it says that he's or at least possibly unreliable narrator. But what gives us that impression? Like, I was trying to see if he said stuff that didn't like line up with what I was seeing, but I didn't notice. So if anybody who's seen the movie can explain to me where the discrepancy is, that would be great, because I'm not really sure how he's an unreliable narrator. But anyway, having the narrator certainly helps a little. It sets things up because we're moving around quite a bit.
Michael Hordern.
Yeah,
is the narrator. It sounded very familiar, but the name doesn't sound very familiar.
Yeah, I know. Same here. That's pretty much exactly was my reaction too when I heard it. I was like, oh yeah, like
Watership Down.
Ah, nice.
Frith.
Yep. Yeah, he was. Yeah, Frith the God. Watership Down. I'm not wearing my Watership Down shirt today. I'm wearing my Petit Prince shirt. But and also, you can watch our Watership Down episode from last year. I'll probably reread that book this summer. It's a great summer book. It's one of my favorite books to read this summer. And I didn't read it last summer. But anyway, so this film, I'm trying to think of what a good sort of starting point is exactly. Redmond Barry. As we said, the whole point is he's a guy that's basically out to just improve his life, which, I mean, I guess all people are, but he's more of a guy that'll, he'll do kind of whatever it takes.
Right.
I think it's all about improving his station and improving his life, and you get the feeling that, and you'll kind of understand why that happened, because when it starts off, he's not like that, because he's just sort of in love. He's got this cousin, right, and he just loves her, and she, manipulates him because she's completely leading him on and stuff, and she's just like because first he's supposed to be really shy. She's trying to get him to like feel her up and stuff like that, and he's like, oh, and she's like, come on, and then like, and then later when he gets jealous when the army comes and stays, and there's this officer Quinn who's flirting with her, he gets jealous. She's like, oh, you don't have to worry about him. But of course she's just saying that, like she gets engaged to Quinn, and it's quite serious, and the family's happy about it because Quinn is of a higher standing, social standing, and that's what this is all about. So that's another thing. This type of movie, if you haven't read any of this kind of stuff or watched any of this stuff, it's a little hard to grasp, because one of the things that this movie shines a light on is just how, compared to especially today and in this part of the world and stuff, how goddamn weird European society was back then. I'm used to it. I've read a lot of these books and stuff, Pride and Prejudice, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, because it's really something, and this movie does a really great job of highlighting that, because his family seems fairly well-to-do and stuff, but they're not high enough, and it's a big deal that this cousin of his is going to be engaged to this guy. People openly talk about how much money a year. It's like £3,000 a year or whatever, stuff like that.
They all know
everybody knows that, and like it's not like uncouth to talk about it. It'd be like you come in and be like, she meets some other, women. They'd be like, oh, we heard about the engagement, £3,000 a year. And she'd be like, oh, yes, it's wonderful. That's just how it was. In a way, it's funny because people talk about this as sort of the romantic age, and yet so much of the romance is based sort of on simple pragmatism. People of various classes doing the social climbing, and I can help you if you help me, and stuff. It's all almost like business transactions. It's not romantic at all. It just has a very romantic atmosphere and romantic setting, sort of.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. This is first cousin, right? So this is his uncle's daughter?
Yeah, I guess so, or uncle, aunt, yeah.
And apparently he's really close to his uncle because his father was killed in the duel. And he was basically raised by
there's a prologue at the start that says that his father died in a duel, which I guess is kind of important because duels do figure in this plot. But yeah,
and he and his mother have been living rent free. So I don't know, man. Like, so he's essentially grown up with this his cousin, a little bit older than him. He's in love with her, and I guess that was not frowned upon at all at that period of time.
That's completely normal.
Okay. Completely
normal.
Okay, I kind of assumed so since he was so open about it.
Yeah, no scandal there.
Okay,
but at the same time, again, like no scandal as far as that goes, but the scandal would just be like, well, why would she bother? Like, when she should be going outside the family, something that like so. So yeah, they just thought whatever dalliances she had, but yeah, she played around with him, and again, this is probably what hardens his heart and makes him sort of into the bastard. He kind of turns into the self-serving bastard.
He goes through quite a hard ride there.
Yeah, so starting off, so he's a young guy. His heart is inflamed with passion and stuff. So he insults Quinn at like a formal dinner party, refuses to apologize, and demands a satisfaction. So they're gonna have a duel and try to talk him out of it and stuff like that. And then you see, this movie gives a really good account of 18th century dueling and how it works. It's pretty funny because there's kind of two different ways. The kind we expect, you step, then you turn and fire.
Right.
But then there's an even weirder way later on where it's like you actually just give somebody else a free shot.
I was going to mention that when we get there. Yeah, I never seen it before.
Because that's the kind of duel the movie ends with.
Right.
A much different duel where they just heads. You call heads or tails, and if you pick the winning side, you get first shot. Meaning the other guy just has to stand there and let you shoot at him. Now again,
it's all instructions too. It's like, okay, are you ready? Okay, cock your weapon.
Yeah, it's very regulated. If you have to duel, you have to have a second. You have to have a second. They prepare the thing. You have to have various witnesses, and it's very formal. So this movie does a great job of showing that. And yeah, it is truly a very sort of primitive firearms, 18th century. The guns can misfire and stuff. And it actually, as I said, they're only a few yards away from each other, and it's still very easy It's still very easy to miss at that range. Which is one of the reasons why it's sort of considered sporting. Nowadays, with like modern handguns, even somebody who's not trained can probably make that shot. Be like, what? They get a free shot? I'm dead.
It's 10 paces, right? So that's essentially 10 feet, give or take.
Yeah, something like that.
That's not very far away at all.
But anyway, what happens is he insists on going through with the duel and seems to outdraw the guy, even though the guy's a seasoned soldier. And as they keep pointing out over and over again, Barry is just a boy. He managed to outdraw him, shoots him down, and then they're examining him, and she says, "Did I kill him?" And he said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Yeah, you killed him, but you're gonna have to go on the run now," which basically means you won, but it doesn't help you at all. You're not gonna get the girl. You're gonna have to go on the run because it's even though you killed him in fair combat, for some reason, I don't know, because it's legal to kill people in duels back then.
Right.
But for some reason, just maybe because of Quinn's status, or maybe they're thinking that they're saying, oh, Quinn can send his friends or whatever after you or something like that. Anyway, they convince him he has to go on the run. He has to get out. And so they give him a pretty good sum of money and tell him to hit the road. He's got to go. And he does.
Hold on. Later on, we find out what actually happened. Yeah. So it's like he was so gung-ho to duel. They said, okay, we'll duel. And they put, let me see if I get this right, a toe in the gun? Was this like actually a toe, or is that some sort of a word?
It's some sort of word.
Okay, so just something that wasn't a bullet.
Yeah, something.
And he did hit him with it. He just didn't die.
Yeah. Yes, it was a setup, and we find out later. He finds out from the uncle or whoever that guy was that it was just a setup, just all set to get rid of. They wanted to get rid of him, and yeah, the guy wasn't even hurt. He just played dead and stuff, and they did get married. He doesn't go back. He finds this out when he winds up. He gets robbed at first by.
I want to talk about that. Yeah.
By Captain Feeney, the very polite highwayman.
The nicest robbery ever.
Yeah,
most polite robbery.
Guy with like nice spectacles on, with the two pistols pointed at him. It's like, could you please come down from your horse? Yeah, that's great.
May I introduce you to my son?
Yeah. So his son, covers him from the back, and very quickly he's robbed.
Steal his money and his horse, and they let him keep his boots though, which that was nice.
Yeah, they say, "Oh, because I like you, you can keep your boots," and stuff like that. So, and then there's this whole spiel about to join the British Army. Okay, so this is during the 7 Years' War. I'm not going to get into it; it's too complicated. It's not too important for the plot anyway. The 7 Years' War, I will just very briefly say, sometimes it's called World War Zero. It's kind of a nickname, because it's like, well, of course, World War I was the first true global conflict, The 7 Years' War is kind of like, yeah, kind of like a lesser version of that, in that it involved almost all of Europe. So it was one of the biggest wars ever at the time. But to simplify it, there's nothing too different about it except for it involved all these other parties. But at its core, it was still kind of what had been going on for several hundred years, in that it was one of many wars between the English and the French. This was just one more between the English and the French. The difference being now was that now both countries had allied themselves with quite a few other countries. And basically what it came to is that all of friggin' Europe wound up caught up in this war. But
it's Britain and Prussia, and then Austria, France, and someone else.
Yeah, so you had the powers of Great Britain, which would include like Ireland of the time. Prussia was aligned with them, so Prussia is what's now in modern day Germany. Portugal and their holdings in Brazil were technically involved. And on the French side, the French were aligned with the Holy Roman Empire, which sounds impressive, but isn't, because this is the 18th century. The Holy Roman Empire was fucking nothing by then. But also Russia and Spain and even Sweden were on France's side. So yeah, so it gets complicated as far as all that stuff goes. But at its core, it was another war between England and France. It just gets more complicated because it involved a lot more countries and stuff. And yeah, throughout that time, pretty much anywhere you set foot in Europe, there was fighting going on between lots of different factions and stuff. So anyway, at this point, he's crossing through the Irish countryside, and he joins up the British Army because he doesn't really have anything else to do. And while he's there, he meets Captain Grogan, who was the family friend from before, who was so nice to him and was, I think, his second in the duel. And that's where he finds out. He tells him the truth about how actually the cousin is married now to Quinn, and the whole thing was a setup to get rid of him and stuff. And so now we're depending upon what you know about the plot and stuff, you think, okay, now it's a war movie. They're gonna fight in a war, right? But no, not really. Yeah,
or like maybe 5 minutes total time.
Tow, by the way, TOW, is coarse broken fiber removed during the processing of flax, hemp, or jute. Flax tows are often used in as upholstery stuffing. So there you go. So yeah, tow is just a fairly soft thing.
I realize how stupid it sounds, and I was thinking a pinky toe was in there. Hey, things were different back then, So
they were.
I knew that probably wasn't the case, but it's kind of funny to think about. Oh, you got me on the toe. Oh shit.
Right. So while he's in the army and stuff, we get to see something. We get to see he's pretty tough. Like, he insults some guy, and they get in a fight, and the guy is bigger than him, but they get in a fight. A big, good old bare knuckle British style fight, and he easily beats the guy. So proves that maybe he got lucky in the duel because it was a setup, but he can actually fight.
Yeah, he can fence also. He's quite a talented guy.
Yeah, as it turns out, yeah, his fencing is really important later on for him. So his regiment is sent to Germany, and while he's in there in a battle, Grogan gets fatally wounded. Right, and just seeing him die right in front of him, that's it. He's done with war, and he deserts. And his idea is if he can make it. I mean, deserters are shot. It is a dangerous thing to do, but he thinks if he can make it to where the hell's he trying to go? Neutral country. Shit.
Well, that's where he winds up. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, that's where he winds up, and now Prussia would have been the head of it because they were one of the Holland. He's trying to get to Holland because Holland is neutral and stuff. But he runs into a bunch of Prussian soldiers, and that's where he meets Captain Podsdorf, who now I know people are going to say, oh, it's just because of his accent. But the guy that played Captain Podsdorf, I have no idea who the actor is. He reminds me a lot of Wall's guy now. What's his name? Now? Wall's. The guy that Tarantino uses all the time, the foreign guy.
Oh, Christoph Waltz?
Christoph Waltz, yeah. didn't the captain reminded me a lot of Christoph Waltz, and I know a lot of you could just say, well, it's the accent, right? But I thought he even kind of looked like him a little bit. So yeah, by the way, there's a funny bit too about where he steals an officer's, he steals the uniform and papers and stuff from, like, so he can desert properly.
Right.
He needs to get that. And when he steals it, there's two guys and they're two like gay soldiers in the river together talking. It's pretty funny. Like he's just like watching them and he's like, and they're just sort of trying to say goodbye to each other. He's like, "Oh, you're going to be going away
again." I'm
he's
not
like,
going to
"Oh,
do a
no."
voice, but yeah, they were.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's because, you know, you have like how a lot of gay people are effeminate, and then you put it on top of like the flowery mannerisms that these people already have, right? So it makes them very funny sounding characters. I mean, you know, I think it's okay to laugh at that. You know, they just sound really funny.
Yeah, they sound funny anyway.
Yeah, because they sound funny anyway. You got these two like naked guys, and plus they're naked standing in the river talking to each other, which just makes it funny. And he's just sort of watching. But anyway, that's why so they're officers, and he steals a horse, uniform, and identification papers.
Well, let me ask you this: was that meant to be like a humorous moment? Like, because you know people probably laughed at that.
I couldn't tell you, man. I don't know.
I mean, why put it in there at all? Isn't it kind of an odd choice to even have it in there at all? I mean.
You mean putting in that two of these officers are gay in a relationship?
Right. Well, I mean, what's the purpose of that?
I guess they just wanted to come up with some way for them to be properly distracted.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they did think it was funny.
Fair enough.
This is the 70s, right? So who knows?
Right. I mean,
maybe they're like, it's a couple of fags in the river. It's hilarious. You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, seriously, because I mean, now you would say, oh, they're doing it to, empower.
I guess
homosexuals, or however you want to.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's good that it's in there because there's so many people out there that seem to think that like gay is some sort of like 20th century phenomenon. Like, sometimes you hear sometimes you hear old people say there weren't any gay people when I was growing up. It's like, yeah, there were. You just they just didn't have talk shows on that. Back then, it was kind of different. But there's some people that think that. So anyway, he's trying to cross over, and while he's in the Prussian countryside, he meets up with a pretty hot chick. It has really no point to the plot except to show that he's a good ladies' man and that he's gotten over his grief and then stuff, because he meets up with a woman who's her husband is away at the war. He is a Prussian officer, and he's had a good upbringing. He can speak German to her. He speaks some German to her and stuff. And anyway, he winds up she's got a young kid. He sleeps with her. But she's game. She knows that he's going to be on his way and stuff. And I think that's one of her coming back. That is the second scene, because at the start, there's the part where he's playing the game with his cousin. And the other thing that people talk about in this movie, of course, is the lighting techniques. This movie, wherever they could, they would use only natural lighting. And for some of the scenes that are indoors, they would have, because the characters, of course, would use candles. There are several scenes that are lit only by candlelight, and this was the first movie to do that.
Well, they developed, new lenses by, like, I think NASA developed the.
Yeah, they used like super fast lenses so that it could capture the light better or something.
That really, I think, kind of, limited what they could do in those candlelit scenes, because the characters couldn't move very quickly because I don't know, something to do with the camera wasn't able to capture it properly.
The scenes were very hard to shoot,
and
you had to be very on point. There was not room for error and stuff, so it's one of the reasons probably why the filming of the movie took so long. But I think it pays off in a lot of this.
Really, I mean, do you think that all the extra work he put in, it was worth it for the visuals?
Again, you kind of have to, I think so, but you kind of have to be familiar with these movies. For instance, there's a movie from the 60s, a long one about the fall of the Tsars in Russia, a very famous movie. It won some Oscars, called Nicholas and Alexandra. I don't know if you've heard of it or anything, but anyway, it was a very big movie in its time. It came out, I think, in the early 60s. I like that movie a lot. And of course, it takes place in the late 19th century into the early 20th century. And there is something very artificial to a lot of those movies that are period pieces.
Really?
There's something sort of fake they almost have like a glow to them and stuff. It doesn't. This movie feels very real to me, and I think some of
Okay.
that is the way they
Okay.
shot it. And it's harder to notice now because I think a lot of the period pieces that followed did some of the same things, took some of the same cues. Whereas, it's kind of like the same thing as like when you watch those historical epics from the 60s and stuff like that. Like everything just seems fake and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, a bunch of white people in like cheap costumes are Romans now, Sure they are. Whereas this movie, I mean, again, it's not as hard. It's not ancient Rome, but I mean, it had a lot of sense of authenticity and realism to it. And I think the way it was shot really helped. This movie has some of the best camera work you'll ever see, which is weird to say because like it's not a movie that has like action shots. So I mean, it doesn't have. It depends on how you're judging camera work. Because I mean, yeah, there's also movies that have better camera work for action sequences. For instance, this movie doesn't have that, but I just mean the long wide angle shots and just the setting. Everything looks like paintings. In fact, a lot of the look for this movie came from actual paintings by various artists from the. Can't remember the name of the artist, but there were a few artists from the time that had painted portraits back then, and they really dug into those to get the look.
I mean, maybe it wasn't available, but I was just thinking that they could probably get the desired effect without having to go through all the trouble of using the special lenses and making it camera lit candle lit. Because you imagine a guy like Kubrick in this room with candles, which is going to put smoke and wax and everything else into the air, which probably not good for the equipment they used,
right?
And do 200 takes on a simple scene. You can imagine you're in there for probably 18 hours on a shoot. I don't know. It just seems like you could probably do that a different way to accomplish the same look.
I think that's true, but as we said, it speaks to Kubrick and his being stubborn. For instance, he didn't want to. Every time he did a movie, he wanted to do something new. Okay. He didn't just want to make a movie; he wanted to break new ground.
Well, he definitely did that with.
And I mean, he'd already done that with other movies, obviously, most notably 2001: Space Odyssey. But every time he made a movie, he set forth to do something that somebody hadn't done before. And for this, it was kind of that. And no, you don't have to. And you're right. Maybe it wasn't essential to the film, and I can imagine it was very problematic and stuff.
Well, I think when you mention this film to someone who actually knows what it is, that's the first thing they think of is, oh, that's the one that was shot with candlelight, Exactly. Which is not all. I mean, there was a little bit of artificial lighting.
I guess you could say it was worth it in that the cinematographer, John Alcott, won an Oscar for it. Yeah. This movie took home 4 Oscars, even if it didn't perform too well at the box office.
It just, he's kind of like a studio's nightmare, Like, he's going to go over budget and take way too long, and it flopped anyway. As far as making money, flopped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we might have name checked it when we were doing our other 3-hour epic, Heaven's Gate, because that was for our New Hollywood series, and the reason we did that was because it was sort of the end of that era, and you could even point to Barry Lyndon as being part of that era, and about how the auteur period and directors just sort of getting their way and doing what they want, and how that era eventually ended kind of around the early 80s with Heaven's Gate kind of being the final straw. I think Barry Lyndon is kind of a good example of that too. And in the case of Kubrick, like we said, so we didn't give much background on him. Most people know he's an American director, but he made most of his films over in England. And there's at least 2 reasons for that. One, and this is the kind of the stupid thing, is like at some point in the 60s, he went over there. And then he decided to stay, he said, because he was afraid of flying, that he didn't want to fly back to America. That seems like a good reason to just repatriate yourself and live in a different country. I don't feel like flying back. But also, while he's there, he found out like he had a lot more freedom within the British filmmaking system than he did in the States, and that's the other main reason and stuff. So
I mean, he must have enjoyed it. He stayed there until his death.
Certainly, yeah.
That's why I was asking you when we were talking about this series. Would you consider Kubrick to be a British filmmaker, and would you consider Hitchcock to be an American filmmaker? Because the majority of Hitchcock's big films are made in America, but
yeah, I guess at their core, Kubrick's an American and Hitchcock's a Brit, but it's true. Hitchcock made American films in America with American talent, and Kubrick made British films in the British system with British talent. So yeah, I guess it's all about how you look at it and stuff like that.
Was the one with Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, was that made in Britain, UK somewhere?
I believe so. Eyes Wide Shut.
I was watching it.
That's one of the only ones I still haven't seen.
Oh, really? Okay. It's
Getting into it, it's funny. This movie, I'm just going to say to let people know, I really enjoyed this movie. I liked it a lot. Not just the technical mastery. I actually enjoyed a lot of other things that we'll get into and stuff like that. Of these directors we've done so far, I have a high opinion of most of them. It's not like I didn't have a high opinion of Kubrick, but I always kind of, and maybe I think I was being unfair. I was being unfair, but I always felt he was pretty overrated.
Yeah.
In that, and now I don't think he's overrated. Now I just think people seem to focus on the wrong films. I don't know. A lot of people bring up like The Shining.
Yeah.
They bring up Full Metal Jacket. I don't dislike those movies, but I don't think either is anything special. I feel like he did all his better stuff beforehand.
Sure.
I mean, everybody talks about, of course, 2001 and Clockwork Orange. They're both big landmark movies and stuff like that. And I mean, he's the type of filmmaker that, like, if he only made one of those,
Yes,
he would still be considered a great filmmaker and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like after the 80s, he's not as good.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think when I first became, fan and wanted to watch more of the auteurs, I mainly focused on Kubrick. And I can agree with you. I think he is a little overrated. But I mean, there's some damn good films in there. You really can't argue with it. And even stuff like you hadn't seen this before, and you thought it was really good. So
yeah. Like I said, the way it sits for me now, I mean, I still have to have the other two above it. I guess it'd still be 2001 and then Clockwork Orange. Then maybe this one, though. Although I like Paths of Glory an awful lot.
Paths of Glory is good. Have you seen Lolita?
Yeah.
I like
Lolita's
that one a lot.
It's good, but I still say if people like Lolita, like it's a pretty good adaptation, but you should still read the book because it's an amazing book. It's one of the not to get. I was kind of surprised Lolita didn't show up. It's funny. So the other night, my sleep is kind of normal now finally, but it was one of my nights where I kind of had just sort of push through and stay up through the whole night. And between like 4 and 6 a.m. on PBS, they had this thing called like America Reads or something, and it was all about how PBS was doing this thing where in the States, I guess you would go to PBS's site and people were voting for their 100 favorite books. And the whole point was once they had the top 100, then people would vote to say what America's favorite book was. And for 2 hours with various different with a host and various celebrity people coming in talking about books, they talked about the books that were in the 100. Lolita wasn't there, which kind of surprised me. But a lot of so many of the classes you expect. Well, what's funny is it was a pretty good mix because it was, some of the absolute, classics, stuff you would learn in your literature class, like Frankenstein, Pride and Prejudice, Catch-22, To Kill a Mockingbird, stuff like that. But they also wove popular stuff in. Jurassic Park's on there.
Really?
Yeah, and actually, they picked the exact books that I would have picked by those authors. Like, if I had to pick one Michael Crichton book, it'd be Jurassic Park. That's what made it. If I had to pick one Tom Clancy book, it'd be Hunt for Red October. That's the one that's there. If I had to pick one Stephen King, it would be The Stand. That's what's there. But and then there's a couple, things that are how it works is they would count if it's a series. The series just counts as one book. So Harry Potter was on there, Twilight was on there, 50 Shades of Grey was on there.
Really? Wow.
They didn't talk about it though. That's what was funny. Every book got at least a little bit of a blurb. There's like 5 seconds of them talking about 50 Shades of Grey, basically.
Let's skip that one, kids.
Yeah, but I was a little bit surprised that when I thought about it, that Lolita didn't make it because they did have some. That's by Nabokov, because they did have a few other like Russian greats. I believe they had now I can't think of what it's called. I think they had Crime and Punishment. That's Dostoevsky.
Uh-huh.
And what's the other Russian one? The one that's not Dostoevsky. Oh my God, he's gonna kill me. Not War and Peace. I'll come back to it.
War, what is it good for?
Cool.
Seinfeld reference.
No, that's a Rush Hour reference. Obviously, it's Chris Tucker.
Sure.
Yeah, no.
My Chris
anyway, it was really
Tucker.
interesting. I watched the whole 2 hours. It was really interesting. They had a few authors actually talk about it. For instance, one of the ones, of course, was Game of Thrones. they count the whole Game of Thrones. They had George R.R. Martin. He talked about his favorite book, which is in there, which you'd expect, Lord of the Rings. Like he talked about Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay.
Few interesting stuff. Yeah, but it wasn't until after I was thinking about it. I was like, I'm a little surprised Alita didn't make it, but I mean, not everything could. And again, some of it's just Americans, and it's just not American. I mean, Americans voting is what I mean.
It's Americans voting, but not.
But it's
not
books from everywhere. Yeah, books from everywhere.
That seems interesting. Do you know what happened to win?
No, well, it goes on all summer.
Okay.
And they said in the fall they're gonna have another show and they'll tell us who won and stuff and something like that. So I never watched PBS or anything. It was just like 4 a.m. I just happened upon it. It was really interesting. That like I said, they had a lot of like celebrities. They had like Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about a book he liked. A whole bunch of people. Of course, now I can't think, but yeah, a lot of people. They had George Bush's daughters for some reason. Jenna Bush and the other one. They talked.
The other one, Barbara.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's because wasn't their grandmother, George Bush Senior's wife, Barbara. Wasn't she like big on that? Wasn't she have like a thing about getting kids to read or something in the 90s? I think.
I'm not sure.
I think she did. I think that was one of her like causes. All the first ladies have to have some sort of cause célèbre.
I know Tipper Gore was all about like smashing rap
Tipper Gore was fucking awful. Thank God. I mean, I think I'm like a lot of people in that I thought Al Gore certainly would have been a better president than George W. Bush. But in a way, like, thank fucking God Tipper Gore didn't get to be first lady. What a stupid woman. Just a stupid, stupid woman.
Well, I mean, Al Gore could have done away with all this.
Prince has lyrics that make me and my daughter uncomfortable.
It makes me tied in my jeans.
How can she talk about masturbation in a song? That's a song. You can only talk about certain things in a song. Oh my God.
I feel tingly in my naughty parts, my bits.
What's funny is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard her say had nothing to do with any of her censorship or fear mongering. She was on Oprah back like in the 90s. And I know she has to say it, but Oprah asked her a question about her relationship with her husband, and she said that Al was sexy. Which is maybe the dumbest thing I've ever heard, saying that Al Gore is sexy.
Ugh.
Al Gore is an intelligent man in many ways, but he's so bland and so boring. And like the furthest thing, like he's not ugly, but he's not sexy, people. He's such a suit.
Well, he could have eliminated all this damn global warming. He could have handled all that for us.
Yeah.
Single-handedly wiped out global warming.
It would be nice if he did.
Yeah. He needs to go talk to the countries that are actually making the fucking problem.
Would help. I never saw his second one. I saw the first, Inconvenient Truth. It's not bad. I didn't see the second one. But getting back to this, yeah, so there's a lot of technical stuff we can talk about, like cameras and cinematography. I don't want to get us bogged down in that, but yeah, they were using like super fast cameras, as you said, developed by NASA that they'd actually used in the Apollo moon landings. And you can understand why Kubrick would have been aware of that because of all the stuff with
he reported that.
Yeah, he's the one that did the moon landing. Sorry, people, we never actually landed on the moon. It was just all a soundstage in Britain.
You know, that could totally be true, and I really wouldn't be surprised. Like,
remember that thing about like that guy that like was like constantly harassing Buzz Aldrin? Like he was going everywhere Buzz Aldrin goes to yell at him, to call him like a fake and a fraud and like everything.
Didn't he? I think he punched that guy out one time.
He punched him in the face, which is hilarious. The guy is so like.
He's like 90 years old.
The guy's like, he's like 80 years old punching him. Like, I don't advocate violence, but that is funny. And the guy was asking for it. He's going around harassing this guy. He's like, how's it feel to be like one of the biggest frauds in history? You're a terrible person, blah, blah. Like, Jesus, get a life, man, if that's what you want to dedicate your life to. I'm going to take down that Buzz Aldrin.
That's the son of a bitch.
Oh, man. Yeah, see, I don't know enough about, like, the whole push thing, push processing. I don't really understand enough about that, but there's some stuff going on there. But, yeah, but anyway, the thing to take away is, yeah, the whole idea was to shoot scenes using as little artificial light as possible, to rely on natural light as much as they could, and the candles for the interior scenes. What's too bad is a lot of the scenes, the interior scenes, were at this place in a mansion in Ireland called the Powerscourt House, which was a mansion that was built in that era in the 1700s, and it actually burned down like almost right after this movie was shot. By the time this movie was like out in theaters, that house was gone, which is really too bad. It's always sad when, you know, something nice and historical goes.
Maybe they left a candle going.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Like when you have a certain amount of candles in a place, you have to, by law, have like a fire chief or something present, which I always thought was
good
pretty
idea.
funny.
Yeah, it's.
I always think of those situations. I always think of those situations like it's like, say, like it's a sexy movie with a big sexy scene, and there's candles all over the place, and the bed, and the male woman are nude, and off to the side there's just some guy in a fire hat. It's like, yep,
everything's good.
yep, watch those candles. I think that would be funny. It must have happened. But yeah, this movie is just incredibly dense visually, and they shot a lot of it in Ireland, even not just for the Irish stuff, but to stand in for places like Prussia and stuff like that, and just wonderful countryside, and you know, they did a great job of getting some sunsets and stuff in there, and it's just a wonderful movie. As I said, the movie doesn't have the greatest narrative structure because basically the novel it's based on doesn't really, because back then a lot of those novels didn't really follow the beats they do now. This is, you know, here's Barry Lyndon, our traveling rogue, and the book kind of goes like, first he went here, then he went here and this happened. He went here and met these characters. He went here and met these characters and this happened. It does eventually stop moving around the second part. But the first half is very much like that. I lost my train of thought. I forget where I was going with that. I had a point to make from that, and now it's gone. But being dead. Yeah, so in some way, and it's a long movie. It's 3 hours, so you can see a lot of ways why this wouldn't be a lot of people's cup of tea and stuff. It has like one like war scene, but most of it's, you know, very sedate and slow and stuff. But I mean, I probably should have saved this more for the end, but I just mean there's some trying to think of a good way of endorsing it. You know, it's a simple story, but if you allow yourself to be, I guess, absorbed by it, you know, and you sort of accept the context and everything, the concept, I think it's deeply engaging, really. If you're willing to put and again, so this isn't a movie you can just throw on in the background.
Exactly.
Or just, you know, it has to be a movie you have to get in the mindset to, you know, actually watch. That's what a lot of these movies that we're covering in this series are. This one very much so. But I would just say it's very rewarding from that standpoint, because, like I said, even if it's not your thing that you're into, I think there's just a lot to appreciate, and that's because of how well shot it is. One is like this world they create seems very authentic, feels very real. It doesn't just feel like a soundstage or a bunch of people in costumes, or, you know, sometimes I watch some of these movies and I'm very aware kind of the artificiality of it. I'm very aware of, you know, right off to the side of the camera where we can't see, there's a bunch of people, sitting around, what's the word?
Teleprompter.
Teleprompter, or that, you know, that table that everybody gets their food from and stuff, you know, where craft services table and stuff like that. Sometimes I watch movies and like I can almost picture that just off to the side. This movie, I feel like, is a really good job of just like really sucking me into the world, which is what you really want in any movie, is to suck you into the world and be sort of an immersive experiment. And there are some actually classic scenes. I mean, we're not going to go beat by beat with the story because that would be boring, and, you know. But I mean, there's a part, especially towards the very end of I think the most effective scene for me was the end of the first part, where he's in his gambling mode. So yada yada, let's skip ahead. Eventually he gets found out in the Prussian army. They find out who he is, and they're gonna kill him. But then they decide, oh wait, you know, instead of killing you, we'll use you as a spy, because we've got this guy. We've got this weird aristocrat somewhere in Prussia, and he's actually an Irish guy too, and he's the high society guy. And we think maybe he's a spy. We think maybe he, you know, there's all with the background of the war going on. You don't need to know the details. But anyway, these government officials basically take Barry and say, you're going to ingratiate yourself to him, and you're going to report back to us on what he does. And it's pretty funny. When he first meets him, he breaks down, I guess because because of his homesickness, because now he's been out of his country for so long, and he sees a countryman. He says, he tells him the whole thing. He says, "Oh, I've been sent in here to, spy on you," and blah blah. And the guy accepts it, and they become friends and stuff. And he's this really interesting dandy with like an eye patch and stuff. And he's a well-known gambler. So anyway, now we're getting a part where he and him are like professional gamblers together. Eventually, the authorities are going to close in on him. There's this whole thing about a prince thinking that he cheated in a card game, and the prince wants his money. And the whole thing is the government decides we're just going to kick you out. We're going to take some officers to arrest you, take you to the border in a carriage, and drop you off, and you can't come back in. And so Barry, of course, tells him about this. So Barry dresses up as him, so it's him to kick out, where he leaves earlier in the night. So then they go into this mode where they're just sort of traveling gamblers. It's pretty funny. It's too bad there isn't a longer section about it, because they just sort of go around different parts of Europe, going into high society, getting into the high-stakes gambling games, and sort of they have their system of cheating together. And also, if ever there's a part where, like, somebody thinks they're cheating or somebody who owes them isn't going to pay, it becomes a... I don't know why the rules work this way, but a sword duel, a fencing duel instead of a shooting duel. And as you said, and as Jay pointed out, he's a very accomplished fencer. So anytime he gets into a fencing duel, it's a sure thing that he's going to win. So they'll either get off or get their money. So anyway, with that setup, so that's where the first part is going to end, and the whole thing where everything's going to turn is that he meets the Lady Lyndon, who has a much older husband, and she's very rich. Because of him, he's I forget what's his title. He's got a title. I don't know. He's a duke or some bullshit, right? There's so many people with their titles.
Sir Charles.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So yeah, he's a knight. He's a knighted guy. So anyway, all you have to know is very wealthy, very high society and stuff, and he's old, but she's younger and she's very beautiful. And anyway, just the setup is they meet at one of these card games, whatever the hell it is, right? And I just think it's a really great scene because there's no dialogue going on. There's some really nice music. This movie's beautifully scored with all the classical music that you would expect from the era. It's sort of a who's who. The most notable, would be the most notable part would probably be Handel's Sarabande. That's the music that you hear at the beginning and the end. It's very nice. Sarabande, especially the way they do it, because they do a big strings arrangement and stuff like that. But yeah, this part I believe is a piano part by Schubert that's going on.
Lots of a harpsichord in there,
right? Because this is actually the 18th century. This is before pianos were invented, so this is harpsichord before that. So yeah, so this would be the Schubert piece. I had it in front of me. There it is. Schubert's piano trio in E flat major. Anyway, so that's being played. There's this. You have to you need to see the movie, but I'm trying to set it up like this. They're in this fancy house. There's all these guests. They're all done up in their finery and their white powder and their makeup and stuff. And there's the candlelight, beautiful romantic candlelight. And there's that music playing in the background. He's on one side of the table. She's on the other. There's all these people. And he's catching her eye, and there's no dialogue at all. And eventually it culminates in her going out into this balcony away from the party and he coming out, them sharing a look and then kissing. That's just pure romance on film. Yeah. That whole scene is maybe 3 minutes long. It's a amazingly crafted scene. I love it, and that's how part one ends. And you find out that that he's going to marry her. And he doesn't have. There is the small problem of the husband, but the husband's old and in terrible health.
Doesn't the husband die at the end of part one?
Yeah, the husband dies because there's a part because there's a part after that where it's like they're at like some gentleman's club or something like that, and he comes in to say hello to him. And he knows exactly who he is. He's just like, fuck you, you stupid upstart. You think I don't know what you're doing running around with my wife? And he's just like, that's okay, I don't care. But then he's like, like coughing up a lung. And then he like dies almost immediately afterwards. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that ending of part one, that whole scene, the whole card scene and stuff, and the balcony, it's really something. It's I don't know. You don't see stuff like that anymore. It's too bad. It just really well crafted. Just a great blend of the lighting, the music, the actors just using their expressions, just catching each other's eye. I mean, and the camera work. Just technically brilliant. I just love how it's done.
Yeah, that take 75 really hit it.
Yeah,
That was it.
it probably was something like that. So that's the other thing. So yeah, we should really try to appreciate it because a lot of fucking work was put into it.
Yeah,
So.
can you imagine? I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could. I mean, if I was the most accomplished actor ever, I mean, it's just, oh man, we had that, Stanley. We got it. It's in the bag. Print it.
As I said, it was the same thing with a guy like Ridley Scott,
Yeah.
where he drove. I'm reading a lot about Blade Runner lately. You got the book.
Oh, really?
This is the book on Blade Runner. This is Future Noir.
Oh, cool.
You can see it's fucking massive. The first edition came out back in 1996, but this is the third edition that came out in 2017 that even has an extra chapter about what was then the upcoming new Blade Runner and stuff like that. But this has stuff that goes back to Paul M. Salmon. At the time, this starts where he was working for, I believe it was the American Cinematographer. It was a Los Angeles-based film magazine, and he was sent into during the filming back in like 1981. So it starts like during the filming. He was on set and stuff, and all the stuff that would happen here, and everything is in here. Everything, like every fucking bit of this film is in here. It's great. From like the script writing, just everything you can fucking imagine is in here. So anyway, a lot of it has to do with is the crew adjusting to the crazy, demanding, detail-oriented style of Ridley Scott. It's kind of funny. I think we're aware. The sequel to Ridley Scott's movie Aliens by James Cameron. If you're a fan of the Alien series and you own the DVDs or the Blu-rays and stuff, you watch these special features. They talk about how James Cameron had a lot of trouble. He had a British crew that he was working with. Mm-hmm. A lot of them had worked on Alien with Ridley Scott. And what's funny is James Cameron had a lot of trouble with this crew because they didn't like him. They liked Ridley. They were loyal to Ridley, and they did not like James Cameron, this Yank, even though he was Canadian. They usually called him the Yank or whatever. All the same to them, right? Stuff like, and they didn't like him. And there was a lot of problems on Aliens. There's a lot of friction between them. Kind of the inverse happened here in that this was the first time that Scott was working with an American crew, and they really couldn't stand him and his demanding style. And there was even a part where there was like a t-shirt war going on where the crew was wearing t-shirts that would like make fun of him, because there was at one part where he, during an interview, he said something like how he preferred working with a British crew. He said, because, I would just tell them what I would want. And they said, yes, governor, and I'd get it. And they printed up t-shirts, somebody that said like, yes, governor, my ass, and stuff like that. And there's this whole thing. But yeah, this book absolutely dissects fucking everything. Like, here's just the names of the chapters. So there's just like, there's a thing called The Book, which is about do androids dream of electric sheep. Then there's Development. Then there's The Director and the Deal. Script Wars, which is all about the two different versions of the scripts and the rewrites. Designing Blade Runner. The Cast and Crew. The Shoot, which is the longest, which is really long. Then there's Blood Runner, Friction on the Set. Then there's a whole section on the special effects, post-production and the music, Sneaks and Panic, voiceover, San Diego, and a new happy ending, a theatrical release, The Cult, the work print, so that's 1992, the director's cut, so that's 2007 or whatever, then The Legend Grows, then the final cut, sorry, that's 2007, and then there's the stuff about Blade Runner 2049. Like, this just covers absolutely fucking everything. It's a really great book. I'm not even all the way through it here, but there's even quotes from Harrison Ford in this book, which is hard to imagine because he's always so hard to get hold of in these things and stuff. So yeah, so that, since this was on my mind, I thought a lot about that when I was reading stuff about Kubrick and stuff, because I just thought, yeah, it seems like he and Scott have a lot in common, being very hands-on, detail-oriented guys, and also guys that would do tons and tons of shots. We're like, they do it like 5 times, and you'd be like, those were all good, but let's do more. Like, and how they just wear the crew down doing so many shots and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a fine line between just a dedicated director and like an obsessive compulsive person who has to have every single aspect exactly right. Which,
and as we said, that just seems to be a trait that's in most directors. Like, that's what being a director is, so it kind of makes sense. But it is refreshing when you get some of these directors, like somebody like a Spielberg, that seems to manage to not do that. and still create great quality, right? Like,
right.
it's not like I don't think anybody would say that Spielberg's some sort of lazy director. You know, he wants to do quality work, he wants to get it right, and yet his approach seemed to work a lot better with most people.
Right. I mean, there's so many different approaches to go with, and many of them work really well, you know, depending on what actors you have. But it seems like Kubrick was a guy that he had a specific way he wanted it done, and if you didn't do it that way, he was going to show you how he wanted it done. So essentially, that's what Ryan O'Neal said was, okay, look, why don't you act my scene out, and I'll just copy you.
Wow.
That's basically what he said after take 6,000, whatever it was. So I could totally understand, an actor getting, upset with that, but that's Kubrick, man.
What's funny is that, and like Kubrick just wasn't really a personable person anyway, in that even the actors he got along with on set, it didn't really mean it. For instance, McDowell, is it Roddy McDowell? The guy from, Clockwork Orange.
Not Malcolm.
Malcolm McDowell, that's right. Malcolm McDowell, he said during the shoot, he got along really well with Kubrick. Like, he was one of the few people that, like, didn't have any problems with him. Like, they worked together really well, got along really well. He said, but after the movie, like, if I saw him in public or, something like that, like, he just wanted no part of me. And I think that's kind of how it is. Like, even if you got along with him, it didn't really mean much to Kubrick. You were an actor, you did your job, the job's over. He's not interested in, like, having a personal relationship.
Yeah, you're not friends now.
It's over, right? Yeah, which is a little, it's a little disappointing, but as you say, that's just how some people are.
Which is, the complete opposite of what people say about, Spielberg, stuff like that. Because, Tom Hanks wouldn't work with Spielberg, 5 times if he didn't really like to work for him, work with him.
I mean, we talked about it. We did a Spielberg show with the other guys for Sausage Factory and stuff like that. He's one of the most prolific and well-known directors. And you think in that time somebody would say something bad about him, and just nobody has really. That's like true. Nothing. People only have good things to say about him.
You could pave a road with the bad stuff said about Kubrick. I mean, it's Shelley Duvall. she quit acting because of that, because of working with him. So
I don't know why she was in that damn movie anyway. I have no idea how she got. I don't know how she got movies, to tell you the truth.
There's a few actresses like her that I just don't care for. Like, I'm kind of that way with Sissy Spacek too. I don't really like her too much. Yeah,
they're both really like I don't want to go down this road because about like not being attractive or whatever, right? Like, we only want like pretty women, pretty girls in the movies. So, like, it's good, and it is kind of unfair because we often talk about actors, males, that are good character actors, they're not handsome, but, they do good work and stuff. And there's almost no female equivalent. Like, very few, basically, almost none and stuff. So I'm not trying to pick on people like Sissy Spacek and Shelley Duvall, but they're just so awkward and gawky and weird. Like, I don't know what casting agent ever looked at their, like, headshot and was like, yes, of course.
Well, like, Olive Oil, sure, she's nailing it. Like, but aside from that, I mean, come on. I don't know. She's one of the parts of The Shining that's damn near unwatchable for me.
Oh, I mean, you just want her to kill her. You want him to just destroy her with that axe.
And even knowing that she's just like crying her eyes out, like when the scene's over, she's right next to where they're shooting. She's still crying because she's so upset by this whole process, which is awful. But yeah, hard guy to work for.
The second half of this film is a lot less fun in that, it's not him jaunting around, getting in fights, or getting robbed by people, or sleeping with pretty German country girls or anything. Now he is in high society. He's where he wants to be.
This is the powdered wig portion of the film.
Yeah, and this is all he's ever wanted, is to make something of himself, even though, again, it's only because he seduced a woman, and then, anyway, it's all her money.
Yeah, and that's what he wants, right?
Yeah, and that's what he wants. And he throws the money around lavishly. He's throwing big parties and stuff and buying really expensive artwork and stuff and doing all this stuff. And now we come to the problem is that she already has a son by this guy. And when he comes into the picture, the son is 10 years old. And I got to give credit to the kid playing him because he's great.
Oh, man. When he goes in, he's like, no, mother, you are you are a shame to our father, to my father. Or
That's one of
like
the best comebacks ever. That's
that
great.
was
Too,
great.
There's a part where clearly from the very beginning he does not approve of the marriage, and he basically says so to the Reverend, and he's right. He says he's just some stupid upstart that doesn't even care about my mother. He's just a social climber. And he's right. Like,
yeah, totally.
then there's a part later where he does, like, in front of all these people, because this is high society. They always have rooms full of like people are visiting. Again, people have to understand how this worked back then. It was, if you were high society, you didn't fucking work.
Right.
And that was important. If you if you told somebody you ever had a job, they look down on you. They'd be like, "What?" So this is a bunch of people that never worked, are proud of it, have nothing to do with their time. So they just try to one up each other. I mean, we still see it in today's society.
Sure,
too,
sure.
Right? So, but anyway, so it's funny. So anytime anything's happening, if they're a mansion, there's always a whole bunch of people over there, you know, not just servants, but a bunch of like other rich sides. But anyway, so in front of all of them, he basically says what he thinks of him and stuff. And that, yeah, it's funny. She says the line. She's just like, yeah, because at first he's going to leave. And he's like, will you kiss me goodbye? And he's just like, no, won't kiss you goodbye. And he says like, oh, you're not my father and stuff like that. And she's just like, you have shamed your father or something like that. She says, no, mother, you have shamed mine. Like, oh.
That's good stuff.
It is good stuff. Yeah, I love that kid. From the very
he was just 10 there, but then a few years later.
Yeah, about 10 years pass or whatever.
Yeah, he's grown up. He's a young man.
And and he also, shortly after the marriage, he has his own kid with her. Mm-hmm. So he's about 10 years younger, just a baby at the time.
Brian, I think.
Yes. And he loves him, and that's one of the only, for all his faults, he loves the kid, but except, again, he goes too far with that, and that he can't say no to him, and he overindulges him, which eventually leads to something bad.
But the true heir here, Lord Bullington.
Yeah, that's right. So even when he's 10, everybody's calling him Lord Bullington.
Yeah.
He is. He's the male, right? So he's Lord Bullington.
The son of Sir Charles. So
yes,
it should inherit.
Even his mother calls him Lord Bullington.
But it is pretty funny calling the 10-year-old that.
Yeah.
But he should inherit the Lyndon, the whole estate there.
Yeah.
But he kind of calls him out, and Barry beats the shit out of him in front of all of his aristocrat friends.
Yeah. Just sort of showing his roots, right, and his hot Irish temper. Like, he was just sort of used to, like, every time there's a problem, well, I could just, like, get in a duel or beat somebody up. So, yeah, that's what's funny, too. So he takes him by the hand. He's just like, okay, we have to have a talk. And you're thinking, okay, he's going to, like, lay down the law. Be like, okay, I married your mother. You're going to show me respect. No talking.
Yeah.
Just caning him.
Right.
6. I don't know why 6 is the magic number. But twice he canes him 6 times. That's where he stops. I have no idea why 6. Seems like an arbitrary place to stop. More than 5, it's less than 10. I don't know. But yeah, so yeah, then as you said, that's what he does when he's a kid, by the way. He canes him. But then, yes, as you said, later on, so he's throwing like a birthday party for his own son, and it gets crashed by the Lord Bullington, who's now a young man. He's like 19 or 20. And he puffs out his chest and says all the stuff in front of everybody. Yeah, and there's just this pause. And then he runs and dives at him, and it's great because, again, all these high society idiots, they are horrified, and they have no idea. The women are screaming, and the men don't even know what to do. They don't know what to do because, like, they don't do physical stuff, right? The servants do all that, right? So it takes about 17 of them to pull him off him, which is really funny. And by this time, he's gotten a bunch of good hits and stuff like that. And
totally humiliates the kid or the young man.
But this does basically ruin his reputation in the higher circles.
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny too, like how it's done. Like one of the examples is like he's at like some like restaurant or something, and he sees like some earl or lord or whatever like that he knows. He's like, "Why don't you come over and join me?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I would, but someone's going to be joining me pretty soon at my table." And he's just like, "Oh, that's too bad." And he's like, "Oh, all right." And he just walks back, and then the narrator comes in and is just like, "Yep, this is the state of things now." And you're just like, "What? That seemed fine." But on the surface, it's like, no, he knows it's all bullshit. He's just lying. It's like nobody will go near you because you're like a leper now.
The 10 years prior he put in trying to work his way up in this, highfalutin pompous society.
Yeah,
trying to get a title for himself is essentially what he's doing.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the reasons why he's throwing the money around.
That was what
And
his mother told him to do, which his mother is a pretty smart lady.
His mother has come to live with them, and yeah, and she's the one that tells him. She's like, you need to get yourself a title, a lordship, because she explains the whole thing. She's like, if your wife does die, you got nothing. It's all going to that kid, not you and your kid and stuff. And so yeah, he thinks he'll take it seriously. As he said, use your connections and stuff. So he starts throwing money around and having lavish parties and buying up expensive art and stuff and going into debt, but also that he can make the connections so he can get that way. But yeah, it all goes out the window when he freaks out and beats up the kid.
Yeah, I mean, him and this kid like don't see eye to eye from day one, so you know that they just hate each other, like totally.
And at this part, Lord Bullingdon says, I can't be here anymore.
Yeah.
He says, I'll come back when he's dead, but I can't be here. And he does leave. And it doesn't help Barry because by now he's persona non grata. So he's really in trouble now. So then it flips to how he's, always doting on his son, Brian. And, and we see that he loves him, and but eventually he's going to turn 9. He wants a horse for his birthday. It also shows how spoiled the kid is.
He's very spoiled, yeah.
Because, they're riding on horses. He's on, a pony. And he's just saying, all I want is a horse. And he's like, well, you have, what's his name there? He's like, well, he's not a real horse. He's like, oh, Father, a horse is what I want more than anything in the world. And you're thinking, you're on a horse right now. It's just a bit smaller because you are. And you can, and he does seem to at least understand that maybe it's not a good idea, but he's like, I'll think about it. But he does go in and he buys the horse and it's like, oh, Father, thank you.
Well, he found out about it a week before his birthday.
Yeah, he found the stable boys told him and stuff. That's what it was. He's friends with the stable boys who blurted out that this new horse had come that they were looking after off the property or something. He's trying to make it a surprise. And of course, the mother, through all this, she's having a hard time because the other thing we didn't keep the other reason Bullingdon doesn't like him, not just because he's an upstart and stuff, is because he's openly cheating on her all the time. Always out, and his ideas, he'll go out in public and he'll make out with chicks and do God knows what, and his idea is to keep her insulated and she's not supposed to do anything. So he really is treating her badly. He's like, oh, you just stay at home. And there's a part where the kid is out for a walk on the grounds with his mother and they see him with some other woman and stuff. So you can understand again why he gets so mad.
I mean, I gotta feel like that is kind of a sign of the times, though. That was probably much more accepted then. It's just kind of part of it.
I'm sure it was quite accepted in that he was openly doing it at parties. Right. At one part, he's at a fucking orgy, remember? Isn't that, the orgy's hilarious because again, it just shows because there's this guy. So you have a few people having sex or whatever, but then you've got this circle of guys fully clothed, singing some jolly song. In a circle, looking at each other. Not that. I just think that's hilarious. It's all right, boys. We need some romantic, sexy vibe here to our orgy. How about you guys sing us another one of your Irish folk tales or like that? I don't know. I just thought that was really funny. The complete opposite of Eyes Wide Shut, I'd imagine, years later.
Exactly. I'm about to give both of these ladies syphilis, so if you could hit up that music right now, that'd be great. You guys could put a tune on for me.
Yeah, really funny. So yeah, that's the other end. Anyway, so jumping ahead. So yeah, the mother, so she's having a hard time now. She's, doesn't like Barry much, even though Barry had tried to apologize to her, and she's aware of the conflict with him and the son and stuff. But so she's just really trying to devote herself to the son she still has, the young kid and stuff like that. And she's kind of upset about the horse thing. She says, well, you have to promise you'll never ride him without your father around. And of course, he immediately disobeys, gets thrown from the horse, and gets paralyzed. And, it's just gut-wrenching stuff. You got this little kid, he's about 9 years old, and he's pretty smart because he knows he's going to die.
Yeah.
So you have this scene of him in his sick bed, and he can't feel anything, and his parents are by him weeping. And he's not talking like a lot of little kids in this situation would talk. He's talking like he knows he's going to die, that he doesn't have much time left. And he says, I need you to never stop, not quarrel, and to love each other so I can see you again in heaven. And oh my God, it's so awful. And then very quickly, boom, in the big musical cue, shot of the tiny coffin.
Yeah.
Wasn't it weird that it was being pulled by sheep?
Oh, the coffin was too?
I thought that was so weird. So yeah, then they go to the funeral procession where everybody's coming down the road, and there's the kid's little coffin is in this wagon. The wagon is pulled by 2 sheep.
It may just be for convenience because if you remember at his birthday party, that he was in a wagon that was pulled by 2 sheep then as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, I must have missed that part. Yeah, I just thought that was so weird. It's like sheep don't usually do that kind of thing. I don't know.
I
I
guess
guess
they
it
do.
adds to the cuteness, I guess, and sadness of it. Like, this is a kid funeral.
Got a tiny casket. Get some
Tiny
sheep in
casket
here.
here. So, is there anything sadder than this tiny casket and stuff? So now you have him like completely breaking down, just becoming like a drunk. Meanwhile, the wife tries to turn to religion with like the reverend or whatever that like lives with them. They have all these servants and stuff. They live with them and stuff. And his mother is trying to take command of the situation because she realizes that the finances are now in ruins because of all the money he's spent and all the debts and stuff. And they're trying to move quickly and stuff. And she fires the reverend because she says that like not only do they can't pay him anymore, but she thinks like he's a bad influence. He's worsening the condition of the grieving wife and all that. He gets really mad, but she does kick him out. And at one point, she tries to commit suicide by drinking poison, but she only just makes herself
Just a little bit of poison, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And all this leads to the Reverend now trying to seek out Lord Bullington to tell him about what's going on so that he'll come back. And come back he does. And this is where the sins of the past really start to catch up to our hero, who, he's had like such a weird... It's a good thing, though, because he's really a three-dimensional person. It's one of the things I like about it. It starts off, he's young, and he's romantic, and he's impetuous and foolish. He completely falls for his cousin. He's willing to fight for her and stuff. He's immediately... The first thing that happens when he goes off on his own in the real world is he's robbed. He joins the army because he thinks, he kind of, the seventh... He doesn't really understand the cause of the war and stuff because the seventh, as we said, the 7th-year war was very complicated and stuff. But he's just like, yeah, okay, I'm Irish. I'll fight for England. First battle, completely disillusioned because he sees horror and death. His friend dies. He runs off. Now he's, now he's a fugitive type guy. Now he's posing as an agent. We did skip over some stuff. There's a part actually where he's posing as the Prussian soldier, where he actually saves the life of that captain that would later find him out. The guy I said was like Christoph Waltz. Where remember, there's like a fire and he saves him from the burning house. That's pretty cool and stuff. And then he's like sort of an agent, a government stooge, because they're saying, we know what you are. We're going to use you as a spy. But then he turns on them. And now he's like a rogue working with this. Then he's a traveling gambler and stuff. And all this, he goes through all these different changes and stuff. So on the one hand, we see that, he's pretty moral in some ways, but he's not very moral in other ways. And,
Right.
it makes him a three-dimensional whole person. He has these contradictions about himself. Yeah, he's terrible to this kid. He doesn't even try to make it work with this kid who he should understand has good reason to be suspicious of like him. He's just like, no, I'll assert my authority and wail on you. Meanwhile, I love my kid. I'll lavish all this gifts and stuff on him, and and then he loses them, and it's more than he can handle. So, yeah, there's a lot going on with Barry. We just see a lot of sides to him, which I think is very realistic, because most people aren't just one way or another way. People aren't good or bad. We have a lot of contradictions and different things, and we do change as we get older and stuff. And this is over a period of years and stuff. And Ryan O'Neal does a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good job of it. Yeah, so we get to the point where now Lord Bullington is going to return to try to take control of the Lyndon estate.
I mean, I think even here, this is the duel we were talking about before with the very, very intricate rules and everything. But even I think here, the kid wins. He goes first, and his gun. I don't know if he doesn't know what he's doing, but he misfires it somehow.
Yeah.
And then it's Barry's turn.
And then he says, "I need a new gun." And they're just like, "Well, that's not the rules. The rules are that counts as your shot." And now it's his turn to shoot.
I mean, as it should, because it looked like he just didn't. He pulled the hammer back wrong or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He screwed up.
And then Barry
he's not really the hard man that Barry was. Like, for all his talk and stuff like that, he hadn't been through the things. Like, he was all shaking and nervous. He wanted to do it and stuff, but so Anyway,
But
yeah. So
Barry shoots in the ground though. Was what I was going
on
to say.
purpose,
Like
purposely shoots in the ground.
So I mean, even there, I think his character was still likable. Even
Right, you see his compassion, and you see like maybe it took the death of his own son and all this to sort of come around. And he's just thinking, I'm not going to kill this kid.
Right.
I don't know if, and you do see he's afraid too, because when they say that the kid won the coin toss, he's like, "Are you ready to be fired upon, Barry?" And Barry's like, "Yes." Like
you would think a man in his state would be prepared to die. He wants to die, right? I mean, you would think someone who drinks himself to,
sure, but getting shot still isn't much fun.
Sure, especially not then.
Yeah, you don't die quickly. It's very rare that somebody gets shot and dies like right off.
You die of like
these guns weren't very accurate, and they weren't very powerful. They could certainly kill you, but they didn't. Yeah, they weren't like one-shot kills.
You die like from an infection, like slowly over the next 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, as you said, so there we see he's retained some likability. He does not want to shoot this kid or kill him or whatever like that, and they say, well, that could be end of the duel. Do you pronounce yourself satisfied? And he's just like, no. It's like, I'll take another shot, and he does, and he hits Barry in the leg because he's the terrible shot.
Yeah.
So Barry, to add to his misery now, he's not going to die. It's the leg, but you know what that means in those days. The leg's going to come off, so they have to amputate his leg below the knee. So now he's a cripple, and he's lost all his money and stuff, and then he finally gets the deal, the proposition, where he'll give him 500 guineas a year as long as he goes away. As long as he's out of England. Oh, yeah, because at this point, by the way, they're living in England. I forgot to point out. Because they move around a lot before. The estate actually is in England. It's a little misleading because he meets her in Belgium, and they don't really say anything about, even in the narration about that. Because for a while, I just thought, okay, they're living abroad. I thought they were English people living abroad, because that's a lot of these people are people living in different countries. But by this point, the estate is in England, which I don't think I knew the first time I watched part 2. But anyway, so he'll say, as long as he leaves England, he'll give him payments. But if he comes back, they'll stop. Anyway, he's got all these creditors and bill collectors coming after him and stuff like that. So he accepts it. And then this narration kicks in saying about how he and his mother go back to Ireland. And we get to see his ex-wife or estranged wife, writing out the notes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point, you actually see that she did care about Barry. She did truly love him, and I think that's the most interesting thing about it because he didn't really seem to care about her, right?
No, and he didn't even. What's really frustrating about it is, like, they have that great, as I said, really fiery, passionate moment where he first seduces her and they fall in love, and he very quickly convinces her to marry her. But then once they're married, he's just like, I don't even have to pretend anymore. He's just like, you do your thing. I don't care about your kid. I'm going to go to crazy orgy parties and make out with... And they even say in the narration that even the maids were competition for her. So pretty much anything with a pretty face, he'd go after and stuff. So yeah, you do feel bad for her because... even to be rich like she was, it's hard being a woman in those times. Do you think she really wanted to marry the husband she married, who was like 30 years older than her? No, she was probably forced into that marriage, and it's good to give you, a life of luxury and stuff like that. But so the movie does a good job of, like, as I said, pointing out the intricacies of the society in Europe and stuff, and how people basically had all these rules and stuff, and how they looked down and things. Again, if you didn't have a title or whatever, you didn't rate, you didn't count. And even somebody like Barry, who sort of got to the pinnacle, he didn't really, even the people around him, they knew, well, you just married your way into it. Right. Which is kind of funny, because again, these people, being born into it is great, but being married your way into it isn't. Like, if you were born, if you had rich parents and you did nothing your whole life, and like in those societies, they'd all think you were great. They'd all show you the most respect, and they'd be like, oh, because you came from good stock, because again, it has all to do with their belief, and not genes, because they didn't know what genes were back then, but like bloodlines, right? It was all about bloodlines, right. Being from the right family and stuff like that.
Well, it's the perfect time to talk about this, considering we just had another royal wedding a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's amazing that people still give a shit about that.
Oh man, people do.
I mean, and that's the funny thing too about the hypocrisy of our society. We have, on the one hand, we have all these people saying, "Oh, how great it is now! We don't have kings and queens. We have democratic societies where everybody votes and everybody's equal." And I'm so glad we don't live in those times. And then we have all these people like freaking out over a royal wedding, going, "Oh my god! Oh, my amazing!" You know.
But I mean, you had her who, they were like, who is she? She's nobody, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, she was beautiful and everything, but yeah.
She was half black.
Wow, was she?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's pretty interesting.
I mean, that's kind of progressive.
It's funny too, like all like the little stories would pop up like on my MSN and stuff like that. Like one was like, who was the celebrity? I don't know, some bitch. It's like, what's her name really thinks of Megan's dress? That's an article? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, God, it has some diversity to that gene pool, for God's sakes.
Exactly. I mean, if we want to be honest, these gene pools, a lot of it was interbreeding for hundreds of years.
That's why they're all so ugly and stupid. It really makes no sense. It's counterproductive. Like, we need a good leader. Let's make them only breed with each other.
It was the same thing with Princess Di. She was the outsider. She wasn't royal blood, right? Exactly. It was a big thing. This is before I was born, around the time I was born, that Charles married Princess Di because she was outside the family. She was a real maverick and stuff like that. But still, I mean, I don't want to sound like one of those people, but I mean, I do have a lot of respect for Princess Di. I think she did her best to use the position she was in for good things and good causes. What's funny is, I think we said this before too, is that now we live in a time of everybody has cameras and phones and accounts and stuff and post their pictures. And, and we have celebrities that are, reality show stars because they had sex tapes and stuff like that. But at the time of her death in 1997, Diana was the most photographed person on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, who's the most photographed person on the planet now? Like Kylie Jenner?
Oh, God, don't even. Princess Di is the only reason why those boys don't look like fucking freak shows. Like, God, have you seen Charles? He looks like it. God.
Yeah.
He needs to be behind a pane of glass and viewed.
I almost saw Charles once he came here.
Really?
Yeah. Charles has come to Canada lots of times. Actually, I think they're going to Canada. We're going to be in Alberta or something.
Really?
The new royal couple and stuff. I mean, we're still part of the, what's the word? Commonwealth. We're still technically part of the Commonwealth. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. They don't govern us or anything like that. But.
There's not a Duchess of Canada.
No. I'll have to show you the thing about responsible government. Another one of our heritage moments. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me having like figureheads that really aren't doing a whole lot of anything other than, pressing the flesh and going out and meeting people and showing off. And I mean, that's fine.
You have like
the
prime minister or whoever doing the real thing. And they're like, Queen, can you sign off on this? And she'll be like, hey.
But it just seems like a waste of a lot of money in my eyes. But
tradition.
Oh well, do what you want to do.
It's funny, like sometimes some countries that have monarchies, you don't think about it. Like I have a Thai girlfriend now. I never think about it, but Thailand has a king.
Mm-hmm.
They have a king and queen.
There really aren't that many countries left that have kings and queens, are there?
Does Sweden still have a king? No, I don't think so.
Not nearly as many as there were like 50 years ago.
How many fucking movies are there? And they're all romantic comedies that are about an American woman meeting a prince from a completely made up tiny European nation where everybody's white and speaks English. Like there's the Princess Diaries, obviously. There's that one. There's just so many, and there's just some made up country. It's Moldova, Moldavia. There's always some tiny country over in Europe that obviously doesn't exist. They're all white people. They're all white people that speak English and stuff. And you know, there's always some prince that meets some average American woman. Like I'm like a food blogger. Oh, I ran into this handsome guy. Well, he's a prince. Like there's so many of those fucking movies.
So many. Yeah.
And there was a thing, you know, called like A Christmas Prince, which was exactly that. It was on Netflix this year. That was like one of the most watched movies. Like called A Christmas Prince or something. Like was like watched like a zillion times. The main reason that came up was because when Netflix tweeted about some people that watched it like 63 times, most people were just like, "You're like tracking who's watching what Netflix?" Like, oh, like,
no, we don't do that.
It kind of backfired on Netflix there.
Well, speaking back to what you said about the movies, with that is the premise. I mean, I think it goes back to like, you know, Americans, you know, they love that concept, you know, because obviously we don't have it. So I mean, you know, every young.
About, sorry, not to cut you off, but just that reminds me, like, what did they call when Kennedy was in the office? Remember? Camelot.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. When John F. Kennedy was in the White House, they referred to it as Camelot, because he was like the young, you know, dashing prince or whatever like that. But yeah, Americans have a big fascination with it.
It's probably every young woman's dream to, you know, be swept off their feet by a prince, like you said, from some white European country that's really small.
Yeah.
They all speak English.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
There's one from a few years ago. What's it called? The Prince and Me. Isn't that Julia Stiles, I believe?
Ugh. I'm sure Catherine. What's her name? The blonde.
Yeah, Julia Stiles, 2004. These movies are constantly on TV too. Let's see here. A college page meets Eddie, a fellow student from Denmark. Oh, at least he's from a real prince. At least he's from a real country. Usually it's a made-up country, whom she first dislikes, but later accepts, likes, and loves. He proves to be Crown Prince Edvard.
Katherine Heigl is who I was thinking of. I bet Katherine Heigl's made at least like 4 movies about that.
Yeah. At least that one's a real country. They use Denmark. Usually it's just some made-up nonsense.
No, Roseanne's sister married a prince. The last real season of that show.
Oh, in the show?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now there's an Amanda Bynes movie from 2003 called What a Girl Wants. That's actually not about princes, but it's about a British politician. Okay, so that's not exactly the same, but there's a whole fucking bunch of them. Prince and Me.
I feel like maybe the Olsen twins did something like that.
They also made 2 sequels to The Prince and Me. The Prince and Me 2, The Royal Wedding. The Prince and Me 3, A Royal Honeymoon.
The 4 is going to be a royal baby or some shit, right?
I actually like The Princess Diaries, and then Princess Diary 2 is completely ruins it.
I may have seen the first one. Is the second one bad?
The second one's really bad, yeah. And it, like, all the stuff that they like, because, you know, all the stuff that we're making fun of, like, yeah, they do that in The Princess Diary, but it's not nearly as bad. Like, it's, you know, it's mostly okay. And then they just ruin it all. Like, a lot of it is like, you know, her being like, I don't want to be a princess. Like, the whole thing is she's not meeting a prince. She's finding out she is a princess.
She is, right.
Like, she's a princess. She's like, I want to be a normal American girl. I don't want to be a princess. But then by the second movie, like, she's just, like, doing all this stuff she said. The second movie is fucking awful. It has, like, what's her name? Mary Poppins, like, you know, singing ridiculous songs at, like, a slumber party and stuff.
Julie Andrews.
This
sounds like
it just ruins the first movie.
The female equivalent of King Ralph.
Yeah.
Remember King Ralph? When the entire royal family dies when they get electrocuted by the film, they take a photo.
The only thing I like about that movie is that he sings Duke of Earl at the end. Yes, I'm the Duke of Earl.
I like that movie because it's so stupid.
Yeah, sure. I mean, why not? It's a harmless movie.
It's not a good film at all, but it kind of put John Goodman on the map.
Here's a movie that Selena Gomez was in a few years ago called Monte Carlo, where she and her 2 friends are vacationing in Paris, find themselves whisked away to Monte Carlo after one of the girls is mistaken for a British princess. I mean, it's just so many things. It's just like you find out you're a princess, or somebody mistakes you for a princess, or you find a guy who you didn't know was a prince. It's all, oh my God, there's just a whole
You
thing.
either meet one or you find out you are one.
Yeah, exactly. You meet
There's
one
some
and get down with it.
oddball.
But yeah, so many of them it's just like Moldova or just, you know, just some completely made up country with a bunch
Moldova is made up, right? Because I feel like there's a few that use that. Not a real place, right? Oh shit, Moldova is.
Moldova is, yeah.
Moldova is not.
And the Princess Diaries. It might not be. I'm gonna find out what the actual name of the fucking country was. Genovia. They call it Genovia. They even have a flag for it.
Geneva and Moldova combined.
Yeah, basically, you know, like Monaco or something. How they make it look.
List of current monarchies.
Oh, good. There's probably some different ones I wasn't aware of.
Absolute monarchies, there's only a few. Looks like just Britain. Oh, wait, no, there's a really small one in Africa. I don't know what that is, though.
Ethiopia had a king or had an emperor for a long time. And Madagascar had a queen for a while. But here's a weird thing. What do you know about Rastafarianism?
I know it is like in Jamaica, right? And I thought it was a religion based around marijuana.
Right. So
is that complete bullshit?
No, it's not based around it, but I mean part of it. It's in Jamaica and it's based on religions from Africa, but it does take Christianity into it too, in that they believe in Jesus Christ. So it's kind of a weird mix. But here's what I didn't know. So you know how in a lot of Christian stuff they talk about a second coming, Jesus coming back to earth. In Rastafarianism, they believe the second coming already happened, and that was the guy who was the emperor of Ethiopia in the 1930s.
Wow.
And he even visited Jamaica once, and they like worshipped him and stuff. But yeah, it's like to this day that like he's dead now, but like, you know, that was Jesus. He came back and he was that guy. He never officially said he was, but he never contradicted them either.
Oh, why would you?
Yeah. I don't even know. Like, how do you? I have to look into it more because I don't know how they determined it. How did they find that out? How did they figure it out? These people in Jamaica find out that this emperor, the guy that was emperor of Ethiopia. I mean, obviously, some of it is they're stretching some of the roots back to there. I'm sure there's people in Jamaica that were of Ethiopian descent, probably, you know, various Africans and stuff. But yeah, but he was emperor. Well, what's funny is they're still technically an emperor of Japan, and that's how dynasties work in Japan. And what's weird is the dynasty we're in right now, or whatever, the era, or the whatever, is going to end when they give it up. They're going to stop it.
Is there a timetable on that?
Yes. Just need to find it. Trying to find.
Kenny Tarr says this is one of his favorite movies.
Yeah, I can understand why. It's a beautiful film, but I thought it would be just eye candy. But I thought there was a lot more going for it than just that. As I said, I found it very engaging. I really like getting a look at European society in the 18th century. Really like the locations and stuff. And as we said, the story's a fairly simple one, but I found it fairly interesting. And, you know, for a movie that is long and sedate, I was never really bored with it. I did watch this one. I did break up. I watched it in the 2 parts, which I would recommend to people. It would probably help you. Because if you do it that way, then it's only about like an hour and 40 minutes each way or something.
Mm-hmm.
The movie is only just over 3 hours. It's like 3 hours, 2 minutes or something like that, with like a 30-second intermission of just some music being played. So yeah, I think it's definitely super underrated because I don't think people bring it up enough when they talk about Kubrick, and you can sort of understand why it would be and why it didn't do so well and why less people would have seen it and stuff. Not exactly a crowd pleaser. And it's some of it has to do, as we said, with him being so stubborn because he had visions. Originally, he conceived of a movie about Napoleon. It was all, he was going to do a movie about Napoleon. And then after he got beaten to the punch and somebody else did it and it didn't do well and he was doing his other movies, he didn't want all his meticulous research he'd done on the time period to go to waste. And that's why he searched out and found The Luck of Barry Lyndon and decided to adapt it. Still a very interesting choice. Not a well-known novel by any stretch of the imagination.
I can see why it was not successful in the same way that I can see why I just had on top of my head, Heaven's Gate wasn't successful. But just because it's not really something an audience wants to go see. It's almost like the Schindler's List of that movie, because it's kind of, it's long and it's slow, and it's just not something that, people want to clamor to the theater to see.
Right.
Not that it's not a good movie, but.
And when we did Heaven's Gate, we stood up for it and said some of the good things about it, the things that it had going for it. But I will say this: I think this is a much better movie than Heaven's Gate.
Really,
my main problem with Heaven's Gate is that it's incoherent. A lot of the scenes, I could not figure out what was going on. It'd go 3-4 minutes into the scene, it would take me forever. As I think we talked about, it seemed like some of the scenes could have even been shown in a different order, and it wouldn't have made any difference.
Right.
Like, I thought there was a real narrative problem in that movie.
I think a lot of the problem...
everything connects fine. Like, it might be long, but everything connects just fine. I
think editing was a big problem with Heaven's Gate. I don't think he needed to edit his own stuff.
Yeah.
He needs to hire an editor, which I'm sure Kubrick probably didn't edit this himself.
It's a good question. That I don't know.
I saw somewhere where just the duel scene at the end took like 2 months to edit.
Oh.
Just back in those days, before digital.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you got a few young, princes running around Japan. You never seem to hear much about them. But maybe if you're in Japan, they're all over the press. I don't know. One of them's, how old is he now? Be about 11. Sorry, I'm just trying to look up some stuff because there was a whole thing about the...
Well, we can go to this. What Harrison Ford thought of Solo.
What did he think?
He's already seen it twice.
Yeah.
And Variety says that Ford was glowing when he called Howard after seeing the film for the first time. Howard says, I've never heard Harrison that glowing about anything. He was raving about it. He said Alden nailed it. He made it his own. I guess that's the guy who played him.
He did a lot of things right. Okay, I've seen the movie. One thing I'll give him credit for that he really paid attention to was Harrison Ford's body language and mannerisms.
Really?
Like, there's parts where, like, he'll do that whole thing of leaning back or crossing his arms or just the stance that's just like Harrison. So obviously he, really studied that. And he does do a part where he points. And I mean, that's always Harrison Ford's go-to thing. I think I remember like 5 years ago, I was watching Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and Harrison Ford was always a big deal. And Harrison Ford got kind of blindsided when Conan said, I found like in a lot of your movies, like when you get really dramatic, the point is kind of a thing you do. And then he showed a clip of a montage of him doing the point in the movies. And you could tell when it cut back to Harrison Ford that he was not happy about that. He was not amused. He was just like, grinning, he was, gritting his teeth through it pretty much. He barely commented. I could tell he was not happy about him pointing that out. But it is true. That is something he did in a lot of movies.
What was that for? What was he on there for?
Oh, God.
Was it Crystal Skull or something?
No, it was later than that. I'm trying to think. This would have been like...
Force Awakens is the only other thing I can think of.
It might have been that one he did about the doctors. He did it with the Canadian guy. The guy who was in The Mummy.
Brendan Fraser?
Brendan Fraser. It might have been that movie. He did a movie with Brendan Fraser, a drama a few years ago about like doctors and stuff. I don't know. It might have been that. I can't exactly remember.
All I can think of is like Firewire, and then
Firewire wasn't bad, really.
No, it wasn't bad. And then Crystal Skull, and then Force Awakens. He really hasn't been working. In the past decade, he hasn't done a whole lot of anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just come out for the big stuff. Why not? Right. I mean, he's older now. He's got more money than most actors put together.
Well, and of course, Blade Runner.
Yeah. I still can't believe how well Blade Runner worked out. I mean,
it's a fluke.
What?
I said it's a fluke that something they managed to actually do it well.
Trend-wise, it's a fluke, but at the same time, I don't want to say it's a fluke because of how good that director is. Villeneuve. Like, as I said, he's going to do a Dune movie next. I'm not even a Dune fan, but I care a lot about this movie now, knowing he's going to do it.
Yeah, I saw Lucky McKee tweeted that his run of like Enemy and Prisoners and all the other films he's done is like forget the director he compared it to, but like just like such an amazing run of films. It's like every one of the films he's done, I've loved.
Yeah, for real. And just to go back a second, what I was trying to remember is, okay, so there's different eras in Japan. You hear about like the older ones and stuff, the Edo period, and that kind of stuff. But each period within it had like its own little era within the period, and there's many of them. And basically, after so the Edo period went from 1603 to 1867, and then from 1868 to now is considered the modern period. But within that, you have the smaller ones based on who the emperor is. So the emperor now is Akihito. He's been emperor since 1989. So this is the Heisei period. Might be saying that wrong. But what's different about it is that we know when it's going to end, because next April, the emperor is going to abdicate and end that period.
What comes next? Another period?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I'm not sure. I mean, they still technically have a royal family, so I guess that continues. So maybe it'll be the reign of one of the sons. I don't know.
See, even the Japanese emperors have term limits. Come on. That's why you have guys like Strom Thurmond who are like 103 years old up there making decisions.
Oh, shut. This is going to make me start reading about the lost decade again. Okay, we don't have time for any of that, but I'll have to read that later on my own time. I always come back to Japan. I love her so. Hope to go sometime soon. Might even live there soon. Well, we'll see.
That would be cool.
We shall see. Yeah, it's time to start doing things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to do it. I'm not going to go on about this, but as I was saying to Jay, because it's not a big deal or anything, but people watching these shows, you're not going to see me drinking pop anymore. That period, that's the end of an era. That era is over.
The cola era is gone.
Yeah, the cola era is gone. I'm not drinking pop and things with caffeine and sugar anymore. And I've changing my diet a little bit too. I'm not going crazy. Don't worry, Orc. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan fag. But yeah, I'm going to start eating more organic stuff and less processed stuff. As I said, I can't punish my body the way I did when I was in my 20s and stuff. And I don't know, the last while I've always had an ongoing stomach thing anyway. And I feel like I've always just made it worse with my terrible eating habits. And, I'd have this period of awful, pressure and just really bad time with my stomach, and I'm like, oh. And then like the next day I feel better, and I immediately go back to drinking pop. Like the worst part of that, honestly, is like when it's at its worst. Anytime like I swallow or burp or something, I would get a bile taste.
Yeah.
And that is heinous.
Mhm.
Honestly, I'd rather have like a pounding headache than it. Like it would come up and I'd be like I would shiver like somebody who just like drank a bunch of whiskey or something.
Yeah.
I'd be like then that were like it just hit me like it was just over a week ago. It was like either Tuesday or Wednesday night, like in the middle of the night. I hadn't slept in forever, and I just said that's it, and I made the decision. So don't worry, I'm not going to blab about it or talk about it on the shows or anything like that. But that era is over. I'm done with that stuff. And I've had some days of caffeine withdrawal. I'm not going to lie, but you know, if I can get through a few weeks of it, I think I'll be okay and stuff. So
well, I mean, you can get caffeine in other ways,
and yeah, that too. And again, I'm not. Just for this, at least 2 weeks, I'm going cold turkey on that. I'm not even saying I'll never drink pop again, but pop at home is done. Like if I'm out somewhere and like maybe if I'm at the movies or I get, I'm at a restaurant, I think a pop then would be okay. But I just can't have the crazy amount I was ingesting all the time. You know, I'm buying big 6-packs and drinking them all the time. Pop at home is done. So now I'm drinking, a juice that doesn't have sugar in it and stuff like that. And it's a hard adjustment because I always want my sweetness and stuff, but going to try my best to stick to it. But anyway, I'm not going to, and I am feeling better today, but I'm not going to be one of those people that blabs on about their diet or anything like that. And I'm much too picky to become that good of an eater. I'm still going to eat I'm still going to eat plenty of things that aren't that great for me. I can't do it.
Whenever you meet anyone new, make sure you tell them that you're a vegan.
Yeah, that's the best way to make them like you.
It's like the running joke. How do you know if someone's a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Yeah. As I've said many times, I feel the same way about like being a vegan or having some sort of strict diet as like a religious person. Fine. That's fine. I just don't want you to blab about it, or tell me that I should do it,
To tell you why you're wrong doing it the way you're doing it.
I mean, as somebody that's done quite a bit of online dating and stuff like that, I mean, it was always a deal breaker for me if they mentioned they were like vegan. They usually didn't even have to be a deal breaker for me because almost like 90% of the people that said they were vegan insisted that whoever they meet be vegan. Like that was already their deal breaker. They'd be like, I'm vegan. It's really important to me. So I expect you to be too. I'm like, nope, click, swipe, whatever,
But even if, even if they're a vegetarian, even if it's not a big deal now, if you became serious, they would want you to switch because it's such a big part of their life, right?
Yeah, and fine, I guess, but no, I'm not doing that for anybody. I'm doing this for myself. I need to feel better. So yeah, that the era of sugary drinks and caffeine is over. I used to think the fact that I don't really drink alcohol hardly at all and stuff and was good enough, but it's not. But not when you have terrible eating habits and stuff. So we'll see how it goes. So far, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. I mean, I haven't done much, As I said, I'm still going to eat things that aren't good for me and stuff, and I'm going to eat red meat and, stuff. And I'm not going to never eat fast food, but I'm going to cut down on the fast food. Processed stuff is true. All these chemicals and stuff. I just got to a point where I felt like and again, this is because this isn't me saying this about everybody. This is my own specific problem. I've had this stomach problem since I was about 21 years old. And when it gets bad, my stomach just feels like a bubbling cauldron of like acid and gases and stuff. And it's just so unpleasant. It's just so unpleasant. And it makes it, I can't sleep when it happens and it fucks everything up and stuff. And I'm thinking, all I'm doing is making this worse. I'm pouring acid and, terrible things into my body. I've got to stop it. So anyway, we'll see how that goes.
Yep. I can kind of sympathize with you a little bit. I have, pretty bad acid reflux, but it's mainly my fault.
I also have acid reflux, obviously.
But with my diet
that's what ruined my teeth. I don't have back teeth anymore because I used to sleep even when I would sleep, acid would come up and wear away my teeth. As I said, a lot of my terrible teeth stuff is on me. Too much pop and stuff, not enough brushing. But some of it wasn't my fault. Some of it was just acid stuff. So there's no saving my teeth. This whole decision I'm making is not to save my teeth. My teeth are beyond saving. They're gone, and what's left is kind of a ruin. I don't want to show my teeth. They're bad. I think I'm a good-looking guy and stuff, but I don't have really good-looking teeth. They're not good. They need a lot of work. And for years, I had a huge aversion to the dentist. Now that the back ones have been removed, I'm going to go in and get the work done and stuff. But I've been in a battle right now since the fall. It was really the fall that I put my foot down and I said, okay, I will finally go in and you know, it used to be they'd have to put me under and stuff and all this
Right.
stuff. They're like, no, I'll face it. Like back when I was a kid, you know, you can stick the needle in me and we will do this. There's a lot that needs to be done and we will do it. But, and that's since September, I've been ready to do it, but I've been in a battle with them over the insurance on it,
Sure.
about whether I pay and stuff. Because I keep going through the hoops and stuff, and they're like, yeah, it's all good and stuff like that. Then it gets submitted, then I get it back. My coverage is called Green Shield, and they're like, no, not covered. And like I had like an appointment back in the fall at the dental school, the university there, out there, and that was supposed to be free, and I got a bill for that a little while ago, and I'm like, no, not paying that. So I would love to go in and have them work on my teeth, but I need to get the situation straightened out first where it's covered, because I don't have the money that they're demanding and stuff. And
yeah, I mean, they could do a lot of things these days with caps and everything.
I had caps when I was a kid, and that wasn't even dental fault. That was just I was born with soft teeth, period. And I had caps. All my baby teeth were capped.
Right. I just mean like you could do like veneers or lumineers, and you wouldn't even be able to tell. I mean, all the way you could do every one of your teeth like that, and it would. Yeah, you wouldn't be able
like
to
I got a tooth here that's like there's nothing left in it. It's just a shattered ruin and stuff. But there's 2 teeth that are still savable and stuff like that.
I mean, as long as you have bone there, you should be good to go. That's the problem is people start losing their bone density there.
Yeah, no, everything's worn down. I don't have back teeth, so I'm over chewing on the teeth I have left, and it's killing them and stuff. Like, eventually, I'll probably need to have a plate put in to replace. I don't know. We'll see. I've been wary of that, but I mean, we'll see what it gets to. I need to stop with my wait and see attitude because that has cost me teeth.
Right.
And again, a lot of it came from the fear. I've just had a long, complicated history. Everything bad that happened to me was my mouth. As a kid, I used to, get hit in the face, put my all the inside here. I can feel. This is all scar tissue.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that from the acid?
No, that's just from injuries. That's from me having my braces go through my lip, my teeth go through my lip, getting smashed. I've getting hit in the mouth. I think I told you, and of course, the epic one when I fell off the fire hydrant and bit the hole in my tongue. Had to get my tongue stitched. I didn't tell you that.
You may have along the way. I'm not sure.
Back on my street, our home street, Ryan's house was the house that had a fire hydrant in the front lawn. I used to stand on it all the time. And I was standing on it, and a friend was coming up. I was not clumsy. He tripped on the curb and pushed me. And I fell face first straight down somehow. I have no idea. I fell straight down. You know how like the bottom of the fire hydrant has like a rim? Usually they paint that part yellow. I hit my jaw on that, broke my jaw, and then as I landed on the ground, bit a hole clean through my tongue.
Did you have to have your jaw wired shut?
No, it turned out it wasn't a full break. It was like a partial break. But I still had to get stitches in my tongue and couldn't really. It was like having my jaw wired shut. I still had to drink stuff for like 3 weeks or something. But no, I dodged having it wired shut. It was more terrifying than painful because I couldn't really feel much. But blood everywhere. And then even when I'm at the hospital, having a hole in your tongue causes you to drool uncontrollably. Like I was drooling like crazy. But yeah, just so many. I've taken so many hits in the face and mouth when I was younger. And yeah, just everything could go wrong went wrong. I had braces. That's all been for nothing. Yeah. I have a little retainer here, but from grade 5 to 7, I had to have a retainer on the top of my mouth, and it was awful. Every night, you had to turn a key in it to tighten it.
Oh wow! So it hurt, right? You could feel it. Yeah.
And at one point, too, with my braces, they weren't doing enough. I had to actually have, I'm sure you've heard of the little elastics.
Oh, yeah.
And you're hooking them around. That was the worst. That was definitely the worst thing.
Yeah, I had quite a bit of that as well.
My orthodontist was a very nice man, and I hated him with every fiber of my being for the things he told me and put me through. Because it was always, you have to do this, you have to do that. It was always so uncomfortable and terrible. I think I said this before, so, okay. He worked in a really nice place. It didn't seem much like a dentist office, the place he was in. It was sort of like a big, airy building. It was very different looking. It still had the dentist chairs, and it was kind of a nice atmosphere and stuff. And they used to have pipe music through, which isn't that odd. I mean, at my own normal dentist, they would pipe the radio through and stuff like that. But I guess they usually played CDs. And he had a CD. This isn't a bad thing, but I mean, of the MTV. Well, I think it's the MTV Unplugged of Eric Clapton.
Okay.
So to this day, I despise the acoustic version of Layla. I hate it with all my beings because I have so many memories of lying in there, like with waiting for stuff or stuff being done to me while stupid Layla plays the acoustic version.
So he was a big fan of the CD, yeah.
Yeah, I guess he was because the only one I remember. I mean, every once in a while you'd hear some different music,
Yeah.
but I heard that one multiple times, and always seemed to get to Layla, which I always thought was a dumb thing to make an acoustic version of anyway. I love the electric version. But,
I can't even think of how it sounds in acoustic. But...
acoustic, he's like, Layla, got me on my knees. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Tell me, darling. And, you know, he got like the...
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good at all. Should never have been attempted.
Back in the days of MTV Unplugged.
Yeah. And I mean, that was a huge CD. That sold like 10 million copies. Like, crazy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, then every band worth their salt was going on there doing it. Bands that shouldn't be doing Unplugged albums.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, Nirvana was actually a talented group of guys.
They actually pulled it off.
I mean, probably Dave Grohl, you know.
There's a few pretty good ones from back in the day, because some of the music really is led to it, like 10,000 Maniacs with Natalie Merchant. I have some of the songs from that. That's really good. That's right before she left the band.
Trying to think of some of the other ones. There was so many. What's
funny is years later, you know, on VH1, which I would get on Much More Music, they would do that Storytellers thing. I'm sure you've seen that before. That at least once that gave me an appreciation for band, because I remember like in the 90s, you know, Matchbox 20. I hated Matchbox 20. I was just like, you know, they were middle of the road, radio friendly stuff, right? Like they were not like the cool alternative stuff I listened to, so I didn't like them. But I remember years ago, like seeing them on like VH1 Storytellers, and they did sort of like acoustic, and it was more like an MTV Unplugged because mostly they did acoustic stuff and stuff with piano and stuff. And they did the performance and the, you know, with the meetings, and I really appreciated it a lot more. And actually thought, you know, these guys are actually pretty good musicians and pretty good songwriters. For years, I couldn't stand them. I was just like, you know, radio-friendly garbage. But sometimes when you hear something a different way, it gives you a new appreciation.
Yeah, even though you don't like the type of music, you can respect the work ethic or whatever these guys had. You know, it took some work to get radio play, regardless of who you are. Yeah.
I like Rob Thomas basically because he has the exact same vocal range as I do. Anything he can sing, I can sing, which I like. Because some singers, you know, they have a different range or something, and you can't hit it. That was another thing I was freaking out about back in April. I don't know if it's related to being sick, but I thought I strained my voice. I couldn't sing, but I didn't feel any pain or tension. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't hit notes. I couldn't get pitch. I couldn't get power. I was losing my mind. It did come back.
Is that better now?
Yeah, it seems to be better. I mean, it's, you know, it's not like I do much. It's just part of my identity. I'm somebody, you know, I'm not a great singer, but, you know, there are people that can sing, there are people that can't. I identify as a person that can sing, and suddenly I couldn't do it and stuff. I'm still thinking of, there's a music center around here. I might take a few vocal lessons, because I've never done something like that before with singing. I've never done anything formal. All my singing has been informal. So it might be interesting.
You could probably benefit from that.
Be like, how many teeth do you need to sing? Because I'm down to only, you know.
You could, I'm sure, breathing techniques and stuff that could help you out.
Yeah, definitely help. And again, at least, you know, getting rid of the pop will help. Pop is a terrible thing to drink when you sing.
Lemon tea or a honey tea.
Yeah, honey tea. I've never been a tea person. That's a hard thing. I come from a coffee family. Like, I'm from Cape Breton. Like, even though, like, being Canadian and drinking tea is not really a thing, but some places it is. Like, I'm from Cape Breton. Tea is actually quite big in Cape Breton, but my whole family were not tea drinkers. But I gave up coffee years and years ago.
Yeah,
I basically gave up coffee to keep pop. Now I've given up both.
I don't drink nearly as much as I used to.
Because I was like in my early 20s, so I was just like never sleeping, and all I did was drink coffee and pop. I never liked coffee the way a lot of people did, though. I drank it as a means to an end. I think I said before, when I was a teenager, my first job was I reffed minor hockey.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to buy coffees at the rink to you know, warm me up and to have something to do between games and stuff. And that's really where that came from. I never really enjoyed level. Like, my mother loves coffee, and she is one of those people that, like, needs her coffee in the morning, like, absolutely is.
Yeah.
I make fun of her for it, because it's, like, really the only addiction she has.
You know, you're a drug addict.
Because, like, compared to her, like, she has way better self-control than me.
Right.
But that's like the one area. So yeah. So it's obviously she's really gung ho of this lifestyle change I'm making and stuff.
Oh, sure.
We'll see how that pays off. So, anything else to say about Kubrick in general? I guess. What do you think? What's his favorite? Your favorite movie by his? Mine will have to be 2001.
Probably Clockwork Orange. I mean, it's really I like a lot of his films, but
yeah,
that's probably the one I would go to.
I feel like Full Metal Jacket's is most overrated. I mean, it's just so ingrained into pop culture because it's like where Ray Emery or whatever his name is the sergeant and stuff. And I mean, he's perfect for it. I mean, because he actually was one. He's like the most typecast person in the history of film, which is fine and stuff. And that's where it originated and stuff. And I mean, nobody ever talks about the second half of the film when they're in the war. It's all the training, right? Or the only thing people take away from in the war is the prostitutes. He loved you long time.
Sucky.
Yeah.
Sucky long time.
I mean, I did for many years. Of course, I was aware of that stuff, and I hadn't actually seen the full movie. And then when I finally kind of saw it, I was kind of like, "That's it." But it's certainly a good movie. A lot of people count it as like one of the best movies of like the '80s and stuff, and I don't at all. I really don't. Or The Shining. I don't think either of them. If I was making a list of my favorite movies of the '80s, they would not rank.
If you had asked me like 10 years ago, I'd probably be saying something completely different. But yeah, I agree with you. 2001 definitely. Clockwork Orange.
They're both
Dr. Strangelove.
Oh man, awesome! Almost forgot about Dr. Strangelove. Really shows his versatility, right?
Yeah, totally.
Sci-fi movie, period piece, comedy, war movie, horror movie. You know, he's all over the map, which is really great because he's all over the map with strong entries into each. You know, they're all strong.
You just look at the 10-year span.
He doesn't really count Spartacus as his own movie, he says.
Really?
Because he thinks it's more of the Kirk Douglas movie than his. That it has less to do with him. And that's true because he didn't write it. He writes a lot of his movies, or at least writes the scripts for them and stuff. I've never seen all of Spartacus, just seen bits and pieces. I think I've taped it a couple times and knocked it off without watching it. As I sometimes wind up doing. I was worried I was going to do that with Barry Lyndon. I'm glad I didn't because got a good show out of it, and I really do think it's an excellent movie. Yeah, the final scene with the duel is really interesting. It's funny though. I can't because I read beforehand on Wikipedia and stuff about the lighting. I couldn't unsee that because it talks about how they use natural lighting, but you can tell that outside the building, coming in through those narrow windows, the lighting looks blue. That's because that is artificial lighting they're using. That's not sunlight and stuff. And I kept focusing on how weird the lighting kind of did look to me in that, just because I knew. If I didn't know, I wouldn't have thought about it probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of good tension in that scene. You don't really know what's going to happen, who's going to do what.
I think he did kind of save his character there, though.
Yes, by shooting into the ground. Because, I mean, he's a guy with a huge temper. Like, he's already beaten this guy in public and stuff like that. And now he can remove his problem if he could kill him, you know? Now he doesn't have to worry about being the heir. Because everyone would say if he killed him in a fair duel, that's not against the law or anything like that, right? And he's not going to do it. So he's resigned himself either to die or have kind of the miserable ending he has, where not only does he have to go away as defeated, he goes away as a cripple. He has to lose part of the leg. So he's limps back to England or Ireland, quite literally, with his mother. His mother said all she ever wanted for him to do was make something of himself, and he's failed. So, it's quite the downer ending. Not to mention, of course, that he lost his young son, which is the biggest tragedy. It's really a story of sort of having it all and losing it very quickly, which is a very common story. But his road to getting there is pretty different and pretty interesting, I have to say. I even could have liked a bit more stuff about his life when he's like with that other guy and they're just gambling and screwing people over and stuff. I wouldn't have even mind a little longer, to tell you the truth. I know it's a long movie, but another scene or two of them, Shanghaiing people or whatever the word is.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my main criticism was the length of the film. But, I mean, I'm trying to think of something, maybe just a few
the whole thing with the German woman is not really needed.
Right.
I like it fine, but you don't really need it.
Again, though, it's not long, though. It's not
Not that long.
It's like 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, it's only a few minutes. Yeah, when he crosses over into Prussia, pretending to be the soldier, and he meets her. He meets her, asks where he can stay. She says she can stay at his place. They have a conversation at his table, and then they have sex or whatever. And then he leaves in the morning. That's not really that important to the plot, but
Right.
again, it's not. So you could take it out, but it's not boring. It's not too bad. And like you said, it's not like a long part.
Well, it's nothing I can think of that is excessively long or doesn't need to be in there because of the plot. So,
right. And see, that's another problem I have with Heaven's Gate, where I think I can think of several things that are definitely excessively long, and several things that don't need to be in there for the plot. So yeah, even though this movie moves at a slow pace and stuff, everything does follow in a logical narrative order. And as I said, I think there's definitely a few really good scenes in there. I mean, the movie's good because it's a really good deconstruction, I think, of some of those period pieces that had come before. Like I said, a lot of those more lavish ones from the 60s and stuff that had sort of a very artificial feel to them, where this feels very authentic and real, which I think is great. But they did a great job of emphasizing the strangeness of aristocratic social status in 18th century Europe. You know, it's a very ruthless class structure that they were perpetuating and stuff, and you see some of the effects of it on people, and just the weird lives that they would lead and stuff. And they said the background of the 7 Years' War adds a little bit of tension to it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
7 Years' War was a very weird, complicated war with fighting all over the place between many different factions. A lot of stuff. The battle that they show him fighting in was a real battle. It's not that important, but it was a real battle that did actually happen. But it's funny too, like how you just see his disillusionment, like how he becomes like this gold digger. But I mean, it makes sense because he was spurned by a girl that turned out to be the same thing. Like he thought he had this great pure love with his cousin, and she's just like encouraging him, but then she passed him aside as soon as somebody that comes along that offers her those things, the social status and security and money and all that. So
right. Yeah, and I think he's kind of jaded by that whole relationship too, to where, you know, he was intending on being with her, and obviously you can't. So
it's like the same thing as like understandable as it a way as for Bullington, you understand a lot of it, but in some ways you still see that he's kind of petty. And even though he's got Barry pegged right in some ways, you also say he has a lot of contempt for him for being lower born. You know,
of course, yeah, that was that's very important stuff to those people.
Yeah, so
so
there's no clear good guys or bad guys in the movie, which is neat. Again, everybody just has sort of their own shades of gray going on.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I did find out that when you asked, there was a real person called Andrew Robinson Stoney. That's who Barry was loosely based on. So I'm not really sure what Andrew Robinson's maybe like that. Yeah, so there's again in the book there's this whole thing from mine. It's different in the book because Barry himself is a narrator, and I think they make it more obvious that he's kind of an unreliable narrator. But they say there's an unreliable narrator in this movie, but I can't figure out how. I was really paying attention to what the narrator was saying to see how if it didn't like sync up with what I just don't get it.
Are they saying that maybe he left out something or didn't address something that was happening, or
like it doesn't specify.
Yeah.
Here's the quote from Sir Charles. It's pretty funny because he really does. He does really cut right to the point here. He wants to step into my shoes. He wants to step into my shoes. Is it not a pleasure, gentlemen, for me, as I'm drawing near the goal, to find my home such a happy one? My wife's so fond of me that she's now thinking of appointing a successor. Is it not comfort to see her, like a prudent housewife, getting everything ready for her husband's departure? Barry deadpans. I hope you aren't thinking of leaving us any time soon, Sir Charles.
And sing.
Also, I think you could feel for Barry because he's got 4 different scenes where he cries.
Right.
Which is a bit different for a male protagonist. He cries when Grogan dies. He cries when he meets the guy he's supposed to spy on and breaks down in front of him.
Oh, right.
He cries when his son dies, obviously, and he cries when his leg is amputated. We really get to see him open up emotionally.
Yeah, Warner Brothers essentially told him he had to choose between, this list of actors, like the top 10 actors. And Robert Redford turned it down, so they went with Ryan O'Neal.
Yeah, I could see Robert Redford of the era being in it. He probably could have pulled it off. But yeah, I like Ryan O'Neal. Again, it's weird that he made some very big notable films in the 70s and then just sort of dropped off.
Well, I don't know. He has like a reality show now, or has for a few years.
Redford?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
Because Tatum is like a lunatic, right? Like his daughter is.
Yeah, I know that's his daughter.
But she was married to John McEnroe, the tennis player, and she just kind of like.
Yeah, I don't know. I just knew
that
he had a daughter named Tatum.
She was an actress too. She was in What's Up, Doc, and she may have been in Nickelodeon also. And she did all kinds of stuff in the 70s and 80s. Let's see. I'm gonna look it up. Reality show. The O'Neills. It's him and Tatum.
No, he's somebody I never think about nowadays. He's just something from the 70s, like a blondish guy from the 70s. Never think about him. Beyond that, I have no idea what he looks like now or anything.
Oh, he was married to Farrah Fawcett when she died of cancer.
Yeah.
I think that. No, that's definitely why we haven't seen anything from him past 10 years. They have a son named Redmond. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
I don't know.
Weird is a few places I read, including here, about people being critical of it at the time for him having the coldness of his style. I actually thought the movie, I don't know, was almost the opposite of that. I thought the movie did a good job of getting, in there and being intimate with things.
Sure.
I didn't think it was a cold style. Reading a thing about its reception at the time. Oh, there's some stuff in here that doesn't make much sense. Perceived cold as self-conscious artistry and slow pace. And I don't mind the self-conscious artistry either, because it's a type of movie that, to me, that calls for it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I just think that's really good attention to detail and just like a really good understanding of the source material and yeah.
Well, it knows what it is. I mean, it's like a period piece art film.
Right. But I think, again, it's interesting and well performed enough and everything. Like, it doesn't strike me as, say, pretentious. I don't feel like it's, up its own ass trying to make a bunch of highfalutin points or anything, right? Like, unless you want it to be the visual style, but why wouldn't you just appreciate that? I mean, I certainly appreciate it.
I mean, I could see if someone else did this film, it could turn out that way.
Mm-hmm.
But
I just think every detail is so well handled. I love the music, just wonderful musical selections. I mean, you've got Bach in there, Schubert, as we said, Handel's Sarabande is very important, and they even have some of the Irish folk music in it for the Irish parts and stuff.
Right.
There's some Mozart in there. Just everything of the era. It's really great. I used to be able to play Sarabande. I probably still could. It's not that hard. But they play it differently in this, in that they play it with strings and stuff. I don't think they do the harpsichord for it. And Sarabande, that's old, man. Like Frederick Handel. Anyway, what else about Kubrick? So, yeah, my favorite is probably still always going to be 2001, just for, you know, it's one of those paradigm-shifting type movies, right? Like, there was really nothing like it before it came. And once it came, it really changed the landscape of an entire genre. And it also changed the landscape as far as visual effects went. Again, this is Kubrick. He always wants to sort of be a pioneer and be the first in doing something, and he certainly was with that movie. Now, that movie, you can definitely... Now, I don't think so, but I would understand the argument for people calling that movie pretentious. You can absolutely understand why people would say that. It doesn't bother me, but if somebody thinks it's pretentious, I get where they're coming from. You know? That super long opening. Like, nobody talks in that movie for like 25 minutes. First you have the scene with the apes. Then you have the extremely slow docking sequence to the music. And then, of course, the crazy mindfuck ending stuff. So I can understand why that would not be a lot of people's cup of tea, but I don't know. I just love it. To me, it's such a great landmark movie. It's just one of those movies that just, like some of the other things, like we said, like a Blade Runner or something, you know, can't help but leave their mark. You know, even you make any sci-fi movie now, even if you're trying like to avoid like making it seem like 2001, you're probably going to use something from it. You know, it's almost unavoidable. It's just looms so large in that genre.
It's been parodied and ripped off so many times.
Yeah. But Clockwork Orange is a movie I didn't like the first time I saw it, but I came around to it. Now I like it a lot. I mean, considering how nuts the book is, they did a great job of getting away with a lot of stuff. I mean, there's still stuff in that that's unfilmable, but I mean, they did a really good crack. And once again, a really interesting visual style. They did a really good job of bringing that world to life in its weirdness and colors and everything and architecture and stuff.
The old and out.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. I'd like to see it again soon.
Ultra violence.
Yeah. Despite the fact that he was too old for the role, he really pulls it off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know that he's too old for the role. I mean, now you can kind of see that with the extra, you know, the updated Blu-rays and the transfers being, you know, cleaned up and stuff. But I don't know.
Here's something that's kind of funny. Even though she has the second billing, the actress that played Lady Lyndon, she only has 13 lines.
Yeah. She just has lots of scenes where she doesn't have any dialogue.
Yeah. But her presence is still very powerful. I'll give her that. Like, wherever she is, like, looming in the background or something like that. So one thing this movie does really well, like I said, my favorite part is when they first meet. That's just a really excellent scene. Maybe you can find that on YouTube or something, people, if you want to check it out. I think it's a really just effective use of everything, you know, atmosphere, camera angles, close-ups, facial expressions, music, you name it. That whole sequence in them playing the game and then going out to the balcony is just one of my coolest things I've seen in film for quite a while. Yeah, some of the stuff he did when he was in the Prussian army, I can't remember as well because that was in part one. Just trying to think what else was going on. Because I know that he was disturbed by some of the stuff that happened, which obviously makes sense. Because he used to fight in the other army, and then he switched.
Oh, they gave him a choice. Either we can give you back to the Brits, where they're probably going to shoot you for desertion,
Yeah.
or go fight for the Prussian army.
That's how a lot of that stuff worked back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, man, I just got out of the army.
I mean, a lot of, I know. I mean, you're fighting, you survive some bloody battle and you get captured by the other side, and then they just put you in one of their uniforms and send you back out there, but now you're on the other side.
Right.
That happened. Crazy.
Yeah, just that he survived that odd type of warfare.
Yeah.
Just like fire into a mass of people, and
It's so odd.
guys step forward
Again,
to the same thing.
Part the whole European thing of fair play, right?
I mean, it was even into the Civil War, had a lot of that type stuff too. Same type.
No, yeah, it was really the end of the 19th century when that finally started to go away. It's one of the reasons probably why the British lost the Revolutionary War was because the colonists, were willing to break from those tactics from time to time, and sometimes even use guerrilla tactics.
That's what I was going to say. They probably use guerrilla
stuff, and the British, they just weren't prepared for that. Their thing was wear rig red coats and walk in lines and fall and die and shoot stuff. Yeah, that's true. The battle we see is very much that. We have them charging the line, just knowing they're all going to get shot down volley after volley, then finally crashing into them and stuff.
Have you seen the Ang Lee film about that? It's Tobey Maguire in it and a few other people. I can't think of the name of it right off, but
that's the Cider House Rules.
No, it's
Tobey Maguire.
Think of the name of it, but
I guess not.
It has a lot of that, and they use guerrilla warfare style tactics in it.
Oh, okay.
It's very, very crude, but they would just basically pop out on both sides of a small army.
Yeah.
War film. Damn it. Ride with the Devil.
No, I haven't seen that.
Skeet Ulrich is also in there.
There's a blast from the past.
Yeah, he was a leading man once upon a time. It's a decent film if you ever get a chance to see it.
See, the seven Years' War didn't just envelop Europe because it enveloped some of their colonies and stuff. So there was fighting in the Caribbean, West Africa, and even the Philippines. So that's why some people call it World War Zero, because it's sort of the precursor to the first real World War, in that it was probably the first war to be fought on multiple continents.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know as much about it as I would like to. And I know, again, it's not that important as far in the context of this movie. But we know a little about it here because it is sort of important in Canadian history. It's kind of a turning point in our history because that's basically when the French part of Canada, New France, that's when it passed to the British. That was just a byproduct, so not an important part. Yeah, Kubrick. Oh yeah, and what I was going to say, since I got here, I like the epilogue for the film. It was in the reign of George III that the aforesaid personages lived and quarreled. Good or bad, handsome or ugly, rich or poor, they are all equal now. Kind of cool. So, epilogue there.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to say. I don't know if it ever really went down like that.
Well, it means they're all equal now because they're dead.
Right.
Basically.
Well, yeah. Oh, well. I seem to be the only person here. Turn this into my own show now. I think we're getting close to wrapping up anyway. I think we talked about it quite a bit. Give him just a little bit longer to come in here, and if not, I'll go ahead and wrap up.
Working with him, as did Tom Cruise. But yeah, he was obsessed with originality and doing things that had never been done before, which is why you're getting to a point where you're doing a period piece. Well, what can you do here? He comes up with this idea about the lighting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Really want to like we said, be a pioneer. His pace slows down. I mean, he makes 4 films in the 60s, 5, but only 5 in the next 3 decades. And there were a few that didn't get made. We said the Napoleon Bonaparte project ultimately turned into Barry Lyndon. He wanted to do a film on the Holocaust. It never happened.
Yeah, he had lots of films that he never got to make.
And he really wanted to do a science fiction project about an android, which is eventually what AI was. And he didn't live to finish that, although it got finished. Let's see here. I've never seen his film noir. So yeah, that's the other thing. He did a film noir. He did The Killing. Seems weird that I haven't seen that. I've actually seen a lot of film noir, and I haven't seen The Killing.
I didn't realize he'd done that.
Yeah, The Killing in 1956, Paths of Glory in 57, Spartacus in 60, Lolita, it's another one I really need to rewatch because I haven't seen in a long time, in 62.
I think The Killing may be in black and white.
Yeah, it is. The Killing, Paths of Glory, Spartacus, Lolita, and Doctor Strangelove are all black and white.
Oh, okay.
All excellent movies. Yeah. I mean, as I'm sure it's been pointed out, Martin Scorsese thinks that Barry Lyndon was his masterpiece. It's his favorite film by him. So this movie does have its fans. It's like a lot of some of these movies that like didn't do so well in their time. They come to be appreciated more afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
As I said, sometimes I agree with it, sometimes I don't. In this case, I do agree with it. I was happy to stick up a little for Heaven's Gate, but that movie's flaws are still very apparent to me, and I have to point them out and criticize it for that. There's a lot of things about that movie that make it seem overly long, overly incoherent, and just like some weird casting choices and some weird choices overall and stuff, even though I still think it's an enjoyable movie. But I would definitely say this movie doesn't have those flaws. In fact, I think this movie, again, is technically perfect the way that Jaws is.
Right.
Really. I don't get the same enjoyment factor from this as Jaws or something, but it's a great, as I said, like, I think it's like got to be like a Bible for like cinephiles and people that want to be like do like film, I think.
Mm-hmm.
At least on that kind of grand scale. I mean, yeah, if you're a guerrilla filmmaker and you're doing stuff like Night of the Living Dead, okay, you don't need to focus on this film and its lenses. But
I don't know if the formula even would translate into modern filmmaking.
No.
I mean, how would you? I mean, you'd have to be some huge name director to be able to get any of the resources that he had.
Yeah, that was another reason he stayed in England. The other thing was, though, even though he had the resources, for the most part, I mean, I guess 2001 would be an exception. For the most part, his movies didn't have like huge budgets compared to a lot of films of the time. That's something that differentiated him a little bit from some of those other directors that were going mad with power through the 70s. Was that even though it is true, though, he would sometimes go over budget or certainly take too long and stuff. So he had those going on. But for the whole, he wasn't really a headache for studios because his movies were mostly cost effective and they did make money. This is a rare movie that didn't make too much money for him, but most of his movies were financial successes. And even though this wasn't a big flop either. It just wasn't really on par with his usual level of success.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he also had a couple of producers that he worked with that he always had, one of whom was his brother-in-law, so he always had some very strong backing as far as that goes. So yeah, he was able to control a lot of stuff in the pre-production and editing and sound mixing, all the way up to advertisement. So he had a level of control that even other directors of the era who had a lot of control didn't have, simply because of his situation and stuff. So he had a lot going for him and stuff. And there was a sort of sense of mystery and excitement about his work once he was over in England and not coming back. He was this expat making sort of fascinating movies that always seemed to push the envelope in some way or another. And he had the whole reclusive artist thing going for him. He very rarely would grant, interviews and stuff like that. And then, of course, he had his weird way of being impersonal with a lot of people and stuff. So all that artiste stuff going on, he played it up pretty well. But yeah, I mean, of the directors that we've done so far and are doing in this series, I like a lot of them more than Kubrick, but I certainly respect him, and he has a great body of work, and he definitely did a lot of work that it's clear to see that was influential for other filmmakers going forward and stuff. And I have a better appreciation for him now, having seen this movie, which I hadn't seen my whole life, and I think it's a really great, well done movie.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, look at his body of work. It's
yeah.
Well,
so what's great about his body of work is that he covers so many different bases, right? Like,
I mean, you can almost say, like, look at a guy like Kurosawa. I mean, Kurosawa essentially made the same movie like a whole bunch of times.
He stuck to what he knew.
You could say that. I
mean,
great stuff.
Earlier in his career, it's not completely fair because he did make some different stuff, but the stuff he's most known for, you're right, it's all kind of in the same sort of vein, the same sort of genre in a way. Usually
it's black and white, samurai movies.
Yeah.
And they're great stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but it shows range when you've got a guy who can do, these different types of films. I mean, completely different, different genres, completely different shooting style.
Yeah. Yeah, some good versatility there. And, I mean, that's not unheard of nowadays. There's quite a few directors that cover a lot of genres when you look them up, but they don't have the same quality, right?
Right.
Like his, it's like a comedy. Oh, it's one of the best comedies of all time. A sci-fi, one of the best sci-fis of all time.
Right.
I mean, he's really. I don't consider it, but a lot of people consider The Shining amongst one of the best horror movies of all time. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a well-made movie. I mean, I think visually, it's very good. It's just not something that I want to go watch.
I like where it's shot. I think they picked the perfect place.
Yeah.
That hotel is like perfect and stuff, and he did a really great shot. He probably perfected for me the ability to be afraid of just like empty hallways in like broad daylight. Like that movie had an effect on me even as like a kid. Like maybe I didn't even see the whole thing, but I remembered like the long, creepy, still shots of the hallways and stuff. Like in the middle of like 2 p.m, and it would be scary. Like this sense of isolation and scariness. Yeah.
I love when horror films can do that in the daytime. I think it's so great to capture that suspense in the daytime. It's really
like
good.
As a kid, I would have like recurring nightmares that must have come from this of like being in some sort of like big empty building, like with long hallways.
Yeah.
Eventually, of my own volition, walking into a room and like discovering something horrifying. Like I'm pretty sure that's where it comes from. Just like even though I don't really like Poltergeist a lot or think it's a classic, I think it did instill in me a fear of a television room and an empty room with a television with static going on.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Which we don't even get nowadays. Like TVs don't do that. But I mean, that would scare me. Like if I would come across a room, I'm in some place and I go down the hallway in the dark and I can hear hissing, and then I look into a room and it's all dark and there's a TV on going, I will not go in that room, man. And it made it all the worse when I saw The Ring. The Ring really played up on that.
Oh man, that's a good one.
But so let's see. I haven't seen The Killing. I've seen Paths of Glory. I haven't seen all of Spartacus, so I should see it. I've seen Lolita, seen Doctor Strangelove, seen Space Oddity, Clockwork Orange. Now I've seen Barry Lyndon, seen The Shining, seen Full Metal Jacket. Haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut. That was his last actual movie. You can sort of count AI, but not really. But for those interested on some more Kubrick stuff, we did do AI. If you guys want to check that out, that is in our back catalog. But that's probably going to do it, I think, unless there's any sort of current thing going on you want to say. You should see the Star Wars movie. I mean, it's not going to blow you away or anything, but
yeah, I will.
I would call it worth seeing. I'm hard to win over. I know everybody's praising the actor. I'm too much of a Harrison Ford fanboy, I guess. I can't see this guy. But as I said, he does a lot of things right. He, especially like his body language and posture and stuff, is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I like Woody Harrelson. I felt like he felt totally out of place in the Star Wars, but that's just an idiosyncrasy of myself. You might feel completely like I can't explain why I feel like certain actors fit into Star Wars universe and certain don't. I just really feel like he does not. I just found him odd and distracting.
Sure.
And again, I have nothing against him. I enjoy him in a lot of things, but for whatever reason, I did not really like him.
He's too recognizable of a face.
Yeah, maybe because that's kind of one of the things the Star Wars always had going for it. I mean, of course, Harrison Ford is the outlier, but for the most part, they had actors that were more or less unknown, so you just knew them as those characters.
I mean, Harrison Ford wasn't well known when he was in the first movie, though. I mean,
no, he wasn't at all.
That's what made him a star.
That's what made him a star, and yet it didn't make the others actors stars. It didn't make Mark Hamill a star, even though he was the main guy. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, not necessarily on the same level at all. But he didn't have Indiana Jones in the middle either. So
yeah, and I mean, I guess you're right, because I mean, one of the things about the new movies is they're not just trying to stick in a bunch of recognizable faces for the most part. Like the people playing a lot of the main characters aren't actors we really know from much else. Like the guy that plays Poe. I mean, yeah, we know him, and we talked about a movie he was in. He was in The History of Violence, for instance. But that's not like a big mainstream movie or anything like that. And Ray, who knows who Ray was, or Finn, none of those were like big A-list actors put into those roles and stuff. Sure, they stuck some people in like Laura Dern. That's okay.
Yeah, that was one of the complaints I had was Laura Dern.
See, I haven't seen her in that much. I know she's been around, but I personally haven't seen a lot of stuff, so it wasn't too bad for me. And honestly, I'll tell you, some of the names that were in, like I said, this is just me being arbitrary. I have no reasoning for this. But when it came to Rogue One, I was really happy to see Mads Mikkelsen and Donnie Yen in Star Wars. To me, I felt like, yes, they should be in Star Wars. But I can't explain why. I can't tell you why I thought they fit in when other actors don't, right?
I don't have a problem with them. But
I just felt like Woody Harrelson does not fit in. I would have liked somebody else in that role. But again, it's not like he's unsuited to the role. He's kind of like a tough outlaw type guy. Somebody that Han's going to learn from. Obviously, Woody Harrelson is good for that. You can see him doing that. So again, that's just a personal thing. I can't, objectively say he shouldn't be in there. I just personally, it just felt a little weird. I feel like the second half is good and the first half is pretty boring. It took me quite a while to get into the movie. Once it gets going, I'm happy with it. The first half, it didn't even really feel that much like Star Wars for me. But
in 2017, I saw Laura Dern in 2 TV shows, so I was really familiar with what she looked like.
Yeah.
Twin Peaks and Big Little Lies. So that's why it just hit me, and I was like, oh man.
I keep forgetting she's in the Twin Peaks, which I keep putting off. I'm putting off the Twin Peaks for like a year now. I don't know why.
It's worth it.
Yeah, there's mostly good stuff. I just always want to do it properly. I want to watch all the other Twin Peaks and stuff. And I almost did it, and then I got sidetracked. I don't know why I was. Well, I just watch and read so many things. I get sidetracked.
No, it's too much stuff, too much content to absorb.
Yeah.
Games will really kill your time if you let them.
Yeah, for sure. The only reason, I've been so scared to play Resident Evil 7 at the normal pace, so actually that hasn't consumed me too much. But yeah, and I try to make my reading fit in and stuff. Like I've been rereading T.H. White's The Once and Future King, which I haven't read in many, many years. It's big, it's all.
That's a huge book.
Yeah, it's all 4 books, right? What is it? The Sword and the Stone.
Oh, okay.
The Sword and the Stone, The Witch in the Wood, The Old Maid Knight, The Candle in the Wind. And this has the unofficial 5th book, The Book of Merlin, in it and stuff. Anyway, I haven't read it in so many years, and it's really great. So while I've been reading that, I've been reading, of course, what it's based on, Mort Darther, which I did back in school and stuff, which is this updates the language, which helps for the most part, although it's still, doesn't update it completely. They're still saying like these and thous and alas and stuff, but I studied this at school. What's weird about this is like this is so small. This is only a tiny, tiny bit of it. This picks it up at part 7. And this book, which isn't even very long, half of it is just like the introduction and preface and stuff. So almost there's very little of this as the actual text, but that's by Mallory. And what's funny in reading this, of course, is this directly talks about the Mallory stuff. This is such a great thing that I didn't really appreciate as much. It's so depressing, though, because it starts off so lighthearted and nice, and then gets so depressing by the end. Because the Sword in the Stone is all nice. He's a kid, and Merlin's turning him into animals, and there's his friend King Pellinor chasing the questing beast, and isn't that funny? And later, people are killing everybody, and the whole thing with Lancelot and Guinevere cheating on him, and it gets crazy. But anyway, so I try to streamline what I'm reading so it fits in, but then I always throw something else in that has nothing to do with anything, and I mean that's fine. Reading the Incal, finally. The masterpiece of European science fiction. Oh, man.
That's what you were talking about. That's kind of what he did instead of doing Dune.
Instead of doing Dune, yeah. He and Mobius have become friends, so that they wound up doing this instead of Dune. Yeah. Would have been neat to get in the original French, but I don't mind. This is a nice, really nice... I just love the colors and stuff. Beautiful color.
Oh, yeah.
About halfway through this stuff. To think that this ran all the way through the 80s, and I didn't even know what it was for so long. But yeah, really great stuff. Oh, I love Mobius. Of course, anything that Mobius draws, I'm happy to have. But I mean, it's also just a really great story. It's so cool, and there's other stuff to be had. But yeah, I'm trying to do some European comics. Oh, I don't have it in the room. Otherwise, I would show you my Valerian whatever her name is. I'd recommend seeing that movie, by the way. It's worth a watch.
Who directed that?
Oh,
oh, that's right. Yeah.
French guy.
Yeah. Tell him.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd recommend seeing that movie. It's not gonna, surprise you in any way. There's nothing really amazing about the plot, and I did find the two leads pretty unlikable, to tell you the truth. I didn't really like either of them, but it's such a visually great movie and has a lot of cool, unique stuff going on and stuff. And I don't know, maybe happy to see a bright, colorful movie, because I feel like so many movies coming out these days aren't bright at all and stuff. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't want to sit through the Justice League movie. It looks like it was shot through like, I don't know, a lens with dirt all over it or something. Just all the color's been sucked out of it.
Yeah, it's like a 90s music video.
Yeah. Very much so.
I don't know what's going on with that. I thought that style died with like Platinum Dunes, like remakes.
Oh. Okay, so we'll wrap up. That was Barry Lyndon, people. I was really happy to have seen it. Like I said, it gives me a bit more of an appreciation for Kubrick, who I've, sometimes kind of unfairly called overrated. He's probably not. I mean, he's really great what he did. As we said, his accomplishments speak for themselves. And the fact, as we said, that he did such quality in such a vast number of different genres, is really impressive. So full credit to him for that. And it's also kind of cool that he's one of those directors that didn't just keep working with the same actors all the fucking time. Some of these directors, they have like an actor they like and they just use them all the time. And yeah. I don't know, that's kind of I like how his movies were always, I mean, some of it was just because of the time frame involved, but I mean, still, it's just I don't know. I just think it's a better way of doing things sometimes. It's always cool when a director and actor have a good relationship and stuff, but I don't know, it can get out of hand.
I think at the end of Shoot, all the actors hated his guts, so they didn't want to work with him anymore.
Yeah, so that's true. Maybe it was just never an option for him, right? Yeah, maybe he would have liked to have done that, but he couldn't because, I don't know, he doesn't seem like an actor's director.
No, not at all.
Sometimes in sports, they'll talk about a player's coach. Say he's a player's coach, or this guy's he's not really a player's coach. He's more of a numbers guy or something like that, or X's and O's guy.
Right.
Yeah. So he's like the opposite. He's like not a player's coach. He's not an actor's director.
But, yeah, I mean, he's not a coach that an actor's or a player's going to stick around for.
Yeah.
Just because you like playing for him.
Yeah. Nope. Really excellent stuff. So next week, we're not sure again. It should be Tuesday. We should probably get a rhythm going. And I'm trying to think what's left. So there's a few things to pick from. I forgot about Fellini. We're going to do Fellini, people. We're going to Italy. We're going to Italy and do Fellini. We're going to go to France and do Truffaut. And we're going to go back to Japan and do Ozu.
That's right.
I think those are the three that are left. So one of those three. And we will let you know in the coming days who that's going to be, I believe, as we continue our series on the Masters of Film. So that was Barry Lyndon, based on The Luck of Barry Lyndon. 1975, Stanley Kubrick. Thanks so much for being with us, guys. And we will see you in a week's time with our next classic director. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Peace out.